I'd like to call to order the May 6, 2019 meeting of the Highland Park Board of Education. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of the public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the Highland Park Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting, setting forth the time, date, and location to be submitted for publication to the Home News Tribune and Star Ledger and posted on the board's website at least 48 hours in advance of this meeting. Members of the public who wish to address the board will be given the opportunity to do so before the board adjourns for the evening. Linda, could we please have a roll call?
Ms. Byer?
Here.
Ms. Cimarusti?
Here.
Ms. Coleman? Ms. Gowan?
Here.
Mr. Krieger?
Here.
Mr. Magaziner?
Here.
Ms. McFadden DiNicola?
Here.
Mr. Rislevich?
Be it resolved, pursuant to the Sunshine Act, NJSA 10-4-12 and 13, the Highland Park Board of Education will now meet in closed session to discuss personnel matters, HIB reports, and discipline. These exemptions are permitted to be discussed in closed session in accordance with NJSA 10-4-13. Information regarding the board's closed session discussion will be disclosed to the public as soon as the need for confidentiality no longer exists. Can I get a motion to recess to closed session?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, can I get a motion to reconvene to public session?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, flags over here by the podium.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, well, our first order of business today is a very nice one that I think I speak for everyone when I say we're very pleased about.
We need to make an announcement first.
Yes. Yeah. Which was how I was going to lead into this. The unfortunate part of the announcement is that back on February 11th, when Christopher Woodward and John Whiten came to be appointed, or to interview to be appointed for a vacant board seat left by Judy Pietrobono. Mr. Whiten was selected by the board and then unfortunately about a month or so into his term decided that it was just not going to be a good fit due to personal and professional reasons. And I meant to announce this at the board at our meeting last week, and I apologize for not doing so, and then kind of scrambled after the board meeting to confer with folks individually. And it seemed like the most logical way forward was to have Mr. Woodward come back and join us as a board member, since he had already come, he had already applied, he had already interviewed. As we said the night that both came and interviewed, it was a ridiculously difficult decision to make because both are so ridiculously qualified and would be wonderful in the position. So we were very pleased to reach out to Mr. Woodward and ask if he would still be interested, and luckily for us, he was. So he's here, and now number 7 on our agenda says, resolved that the Highland Park Board of Education appoint Christopher Woodward, who was a candidate for the position at the meeting held on February 11th, 2019, pursuant to Board Policy 0143, as a member of the Board of Education through December 31st, 2020. So to clarify, Mr. Woodward will be filling the unexpired term of Judy Pietrobono. Her term would also coincidentally expire on December 31st, 2020. So Mr. Woodward's term will expire on December 31st, 2020, and at that point he'll decide whether or not he's going to run for that seat or not. So we are very pleased to take a vote right now on appointing Mr. Woodward.
Second.
We don't need to suspend the rules and elect.
You moved it, yes?
Oh, good.
Your statement was moving it, yes?
I wasn't
Resolved?
quite, but let's do that more officially.
Okay.
Can I get a motion to adopt agenda item number 7?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Now I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion? Linda, do we need to do, we should do a full-on roll call, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Byer?
Yes.
Ms. Cimarusti?
Yes?
Ms. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Gowan?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Magaziner?
Yes.
Ms. McFadden DiNicola?
Yes.
Mr. Rislevich?
Yes.
Mr. Woodward, welcome. Please come take your seat. And how long does it take us to make fancy nameplates, Linda? I don't remember. Probably not for next week's meeting.
Not for-
It'll take us
not
a little
1
while.
week.
Maybe for next month, we'll have a fancy nameplate for you.
Should I have cookies? Like a little bit of macaroni.
So Linda will take a moment now to swear Mr. Woodward in, and
So if you can come closer to the mic, and so because it only picks you up if you're close, and then repeat after me. You bring the mic closer to, that's your mic. Yes.
Okay, testing.
Okay.
Yeah.
there you go.
Okay. So repeat after me, please. I do solemnly affirm
I do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and to the governments established in the United States and this state
and to the governments established in the United States and this state
under authority of the people.
under authority of the people,
And I do affirm
and I do affirm
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
for the office of a member of a Board of Education,
for the office of member of a Board of Education,
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly
perform all the duties of that office
perform all the duties of that office
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
I do affirm that I am not disqualified as a voter
I do affirm that I am not disqualified as a voter
pursuant to RS 19:4-1,
pursuant to RS 19:4-1,
and I am not disqualified due to a conviction of a crime
and I am not disqualified due to a conviction of a crime
of offense listed in NJSA 18A:12-1.
of offense listed in NJSA 18A:12-1.
Congratulations. Welcome to the board. I am also giving Mr. Woodward a copy of the Board Member Code of Ethics and Conflict of Interest, which is usually presented to board members at the reorganization meeting, and so it's presented to him as a new board member. So I'm going to ask him to just sign a acknowledgement of receipt of the Code of Ethics, and we'll be going, well, Dr. Taylor and I will be going over this and a lot of other things in the very near future. We're good.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Linda, and thank you, Mr. Woodward, for being willing to join us. We look forward to getting to know you. Okay, so we're going to move on to agenda item number 8, which is communications. And under the communications report, Dr. Taylor is going to spend a little bit of time speaking about some of the communications that have been going back and forth between community members and Dr. Taylor and board members related to the middle school and high school world language program.
Sure. I thought it'd be best that I respond in a public session so that those in the audience can also, as a group, hear my talking points. What I'll do is I'll take the transcript of what I'm speaking from and put it on the website. I often don't break out my talking points. I'm pretty good at extemporaneously speaking. But this is such a complex issue. It started out 2 years ago as a personnel matter when we couldn't find a French teacher to replace Mr. Patterson. Then it evolved into a curriculum matter. Now it's become threefold, a personnel, curriculum, and finance issue. So let me start by just reminding the board and the community that we're in this predicament because when Mr. Patterson, our French teacher at the middle school back in November of 2016, suddenly resigned, we scrambled to find a French teacher. We were able to find a replacement French teacher. The pickings were very slim. The individual we hired didn't work out. We couldn't then find a replacement for that individual. So from approximately March to June, we had to piecemeal long-term substitutes to work with the remaining middle school students taking French. Now, between December of 2016 and July of 2017, we spent close to $7,000, and as I presented on the monitor at the last board meeting, went through a number of different outlets, reached out to the Foreign Language Educators in New Jersey Association, Rutgers University. Obviously, we pulled on our own teachers and principals network. Ms. Osemier is the middle school principal, but was previously a world language teacher. So she was very involved in the world language network. But after all that time, come mid-July, we still hadn't found viable candidates to bring in. We Skyped, we did the whole, we did as much as we felt we could do.
Meaning you Skyped with actual candidates who had applied?
Absolutely. I'm sorry. We actually had some candidates overseas on the West Coast who reached out to us, and we did do whatever we could. No, we could fly them in to arrange for interviews. So, mid-July, the principal, the supervisors, and I had to make a decision. Do we offer students a second language, those who are expecting to take French come the 2017-18 school year, or just offer them one language, and that is Spanish? So we scrambled. We only had really a month, if you consider the time we had to put into hiring and writing curriculum and whatnot to find somebody. So I put together a survey, albeit it was summer. I recognized that we had, I think, a respondency rate in somewhere in the low 50s. But as a result of the survey, when we asked people to come back to us, and these were all, by the way, the incoming 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students and their families, to tell us what language they would prefer we offer if we can't offer French, Mandarin came out on top. 72% wanted Mandarin to be offered. So let me explain why we can't continue to offer French as much as we have tried and as much as we have, I say we, me, members of the leadership team, members of the board have entertained some alternatives that have come to our attention that at first seemed viable, but in the end are just not viable. First of all, in the long term, there is going to be a cost involved in keeping both Mandarin and French if we do so on a limited basis. The alternative plan we received would have us offer Spanish from grades 6 to 12, Mandarin and French from grades 8 to 12. So we would stop offering Mandarin in 6th, 7th grade and begin it in 8th grade. So you'd have one language from 6 to 12 and two languages, presumably from grades 8 to 12. But there is a cost involved. First of all, there would be an approximately $18,000 expenditure for providing an existing Spanish teacher at the middle school, what we refer to as 6th period compensation. Our teachers are contracted only to teach 5 periods. I would go down this road if we did, thinking we would have to open up a 6th period. Why? Let me explain. Because right now we have 19 students who are taking Mandarin in grade 6. So I'm going to presume that there is a pool of students, perhaps 19, who want to take a world language down the road. If you factor in, by the way, looking ahead to 2020, 2021, 7th graders who are also taking Mandarin currently, the total number of 6th and 7th grade students taking Mandarin is 26. So by 2020, 2021, I've got to serve likely 26 students, give or take a few, who want to take a world language other than Spanish. The reason why I would have to open up a 6th period is because even though I have, my numbers fluctuate in the current 5 periods. I've got some periods that may have 15 students, some periods, I have one period that has 30 students, is because we are such a small school and have limited personnel, yet have great student support needs. Some students have 504 plans, some students have IEPs, some students, we are still tracking in math, some students have to have a certain level of math, some students have to have intervention for math and reading. We can't simply assume that we can slot as many as 26 students, or 19 if it was just next year, into the existing sections. There's a likelihood we would have to accommodate them in their schedule to open up a sixth period. And we have a history of this, unfortunately. In both middle and high school, when we have an influx of students, either because we have new registrants or we have a bump class, and they have great needs, at the last minute, when we're scheduling ahead for the following year, we sometimes have to open up a sixth period because we just don't have the staff to say, okay, well, I have enough math and I have enough language arts and I have enough social studies. I can just flexibly schedule a student by dropping him or her in existing sections and assume that he or she can still get all the IEP, 504, or leveled needs. It's not that simple. If we were a big school district like North Brunswick or South Brunswick or Piscataway, had more staff to go around, more of a schedule with which to work, perhaps I would have that flexibility. The other point I want to make about the costs that we would have to sustain, which we're not in a place to do at this point, as we know the budget is extremely difficult, would be to incorporate a program that came to my attention through this alternative plan that would have Rutgers collaborate with our school district to relieve Ms. Havas, the current French teacher, of some of her duties in the upper levels so she could push down into the middle school. We toyed around with some numbers. $8,000 was a number that came out as a potential cost for this program. That number is based on providing a part-time lecturer, a roughly $5,500 salary, and then throw the university a couple of more $1,000s to compensate them. It was a ballpark number we came up with, but we're talking about at least $8,000. So the projected total cost could be, in the midterm, if we were to bring on this Rutgers program, I'm going to say approximately $26,000. $18,000 for the sixth period and $8,000, which I think is a low number. I mean, the other program of which I'm aware that Rutgers is operating like this is in Bridgewater, and while I didn't reach out to them to discuss costs, I do believe they're charging the students tuition on some level, which the district would have to incur for these students to take French with the Rutgers partner. Let me continue and talk a little bit about the scheduling concern when it comes to trying to sustain the French program. We are assuming that the current French teacher at the high school could drop down into the middle school and teach 8th grade French. But as Mr. Lassiter pointed out to me, it is not as easy as just assuming we can schedule a high school teacher, or a middle school teacher for that matter, into another school schedule. Both our middle and high schools operate on different schedules. They rotate differently. They have different numbers of periods. The periods meet at different times. In fact, this is one reason why we're not able to just take our band, orchestra, and chorus teacher from the high school and push them into the middle school on a more full-time basis. I would love to see us offer chorus, orchestra, band groups as well as lessons at the middle school, but we have not been able to do that because the schedules in each building just don't allow for Mr. Werner, Ms. Chambers, and our orchestra teacher to just push in. So it's an unknown as to whether we could in fact have Mr. Havas, Ms. Havas teach at the middle school. We try our best, but it's not a given. Now, aside from sustaining the program itself, for monetary reasons, it's not obviously cost effective. There are some scheduling concerns. I just don't believe it is prudent for us to be offering world languages on such a limited basis. Talk about grades 8 to 12. The research says, and I'm not going to go bore people with the research because we have experts in the room who know this research, says that you want to hit world language instruction at an early a level as you can. I'm sure there's quantitative data to show for the efficacy of starting world language programs at the elementary level and tracking fluency all the way through high school. By going with the proposed plan that to which the emails refer, you'd be talking about only offering one language, and that's Spanish, from middle school on up. The other languages will be offered grades 8 to 12. So essentially, you're offering French and Mandarin, according to this plan, as survey courses. If we had the money, if we had the wherewithal, if anything, I'd like to push any language we offer down lower into the elementary levels. As it is, we have a Spanish program on a very cursory level at Bartle. But if we're going to commit to a language, I think we should do it, if anything, so it's full scale, all in, as opposed to half in. And finally, the last thing I'd like to point out, and again, all of what I'm saying is going to be printed, put on the website. The Rutgers program, as I've said in some email replies to those who've sent the board emails, is predicated on a vision. And while I'm all into working through plans and ideas, I have not done anything fast and furiously. I've tried to do them slowly and steadily. In fact, much to the chagrin of some of the board members who would like me to incorporate restorative practices on a much more swift level. This is the kind of thing that takes time. And right now, I feel I owe it to our student body to commit to a full-scale, comprehensive world language program, whatever the language is, that is in place and can continue, rather than just hope and assume that things are going to come about the way we expect them to. I just want to close by saying that, well, first of all, there's a theory running amok that we started the Mandarin program because we want to attract students from China to offset our budget. As some of you are aware, we've been trying to attract students from China so we can have them pay tuition on a J1 or F1 visa at about $20,000 a year to offset our budget. I can tell you unequivocally, this was not our intention. In fact, it didn't even cross my mind until I saw it in an email about a week ago that there should be a connection between us offering Mandarin and trying to recruit students from China. In fact, if that was the case, then I'm certainly not doing a very good job of it. Because in the last 2 years, we've only had 2 Chinese students, or 2 international students, come to us to pay us no more than, between the 2 of them, $50,000 approximately each year to offset the budget. Going into the next year, we are hoping we might have 5 students, international students, help us offset the budget. We've included $100,000 in revenue, on the revenue side for that. But based on the history, it's not looking good. We're not recruiting. We don't go to China. We don't try to bring them in. Yes, we do entertain Chinese students who want to visit us for a week or 2 at a time. But we have no recruiting effort, let alone intention to incorporate a program that people have told us they're interested in us offering, i.e. Mandarin, just to recruit students from China. Last but not least, obviously, as a board and a leadership team, we're always in learning mode, and we're always in reflection mode. We're going to continue to review the decision of our overall world language program just to ensure its viability. Just like we did with Hebrew. When Hebrew went the wayside, we had to eliminate it. And we'll do the same with Spanish and Mandarin going forward. I will have on the front page of the website in the news section a PDF, so you can download this if you'd like. Thank you.
Anybody have any?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This may be really stupid, but explain to me why we couldn't have just French from 9th through 12th grade. I
Why
mean,
we
not
couldn't
just French as a language at high school. Right, starting French, 9th through 12th grade.
Why couldn't we just have French at the high school?
Right.
If we do that, then assuming that our Mandarin students, and we've got over 50 students right now total in our Mandarin program, and we want to see the Mandarin students through from grades 6 to 12, eventually I'm going to have to hire additional staff to accommodate those students in the probably junior and senior years of the high school, likely a part-time staff member to accommodate those Mandarin students. Part-time staff usually cost about $25,000.
So do you mean both French and Mandarin, or discontinue Mandarin and?
No, I
Keep
mean,
French.
I'd like to see both. You know, I live with a world languages teacher, and his big thing is the hours of instruction that is necessary in order to achieve any sort of proficiency. So French is a Category 1 language, and it takes 575 hours around to achieve proficiency. Mandarin is a Category 5, 2,200 hours to achieve any sort of proficiency. So I feel even if we have Mandarin from 6th grade all the way through 12th grade, we cannot provide them even close to that in the amount of hours that they would need. They're not going to leave here with any level of proficiency. Whereas even if we had just 9th through 12th grade French, they could achieve. And we've had kids who have started French 1 in freshman year, and they have achieved proficiency.
I'm not trying to refute your points just for this. I don't want to be, look, there's a perception, I'm sure, that I'm a French language killer, that I'm out to get the French person. I'm not on your part, but perhaps on other members of the community's part. That's not the case. The other reason why we're in this predicament is because I couldn't find a French teacher 2 years ago.
From middle school.
And that's still the situation today.
Right.
I've surveyed my
We
peers.
have one at the high school.
We do, but we don't know how long. We don't know how long. And
But we don't know
it's
how long our
eventually,
Mandarin teacher will be here.
eventually that individual is going to move on, whenever. And at that point, I'm going to need to do something. Either I'm going to have the kids who are coming up fall off the cliff, if I can't find another French teacher at that point, knowing that I had a history of having difficulty and my peers are still having that difficulty.
So that's the other question that I have. Like, this was a couple of years ago. So, things come and go in waves and cycles. Like, is this still a major issue? Like, a couple of years ago, I remember doing a search and seeing that many districts in the area were looking for
I was told by a
French
professor at Rutgers University about, must have been months ago, it wasn't years ago, that she is seeing more and more French language students go the route of translator professions. People are, it appears, based on what I was told, are understanding that the market is just not there right now for offering French in the school program. And so there's no long-term vision at this point that says we're going to have a better pool. This year, I know it's still an issue. And look, 2 years ago, we had to make this tough choice. And like I suggested a couple of minutes ago, I like to go all in on something. I'm not a half in, half out person. When I offered Mandarin, I knew I was making a commitment. And if I was going to make that commitment, I had to see it through.
Scott?
But right now,
Can we,
sorry?
did you want to?
I just wanted to say, in terms of the having it just in 9 through 12, am I correct that we had talked about, as we phase out the program, that staffing responsibilities would change? So, for example, we might not have staffing availability in 3 years to still be teaching all of the high school French. Is that correct? Because we had contemplated reassigning certain staff to perhaps ELL or to, in other words, we are planning not to have a full-time high school French teacher for the next 4 years.
I thought that was the plan because we were considering phasing out French.
But now it's a budget issue, if we, now we've budgeted based on that.
And in addition, I believe in talking with Michelle, who chairs curriculum, and this has been discussed in curriculum, the proposal was discussed in curriculum, one of the concerns in the curriculum committee was the idea of not offering anything but Spanish in 6th and 7th grade. And I've heard that concern echoed among other board members, that we want to be able to offer more in 6th and 7th grade than just Spanish. And when we know we've done this exhaustive search for a French teacher, we weren't able to find that French middle school teacher. We have no reason to believe that there's one available now. Folks felt strongly that it was important to have 2 viable languages from 6 through 12. And that's the biggest deciding factor. All these things, other things, to my mind, are somewhat esoteric. Even the budget issue. It's the idea that we feel strongly, especially with the number of native Spanish speakers that we have in our district, that it's important to offer more than just Spanish when students come into 6th and 7th grade.
But
So if I could just support that from the
But we'll get to you in such a second.
from the curriculum standpoint, like we've discussed this several times in our curriculum meetings, that language acquisition happens earlier in life rather than later. So should we have the opportunity to have languages available in Irving, that would make more of an impression on the students long term. So when we're looking at only adding languages to, I would say, the back end of their education in Highland Park, what we're really talking about is their college resume. We're not talking about educational.
We would be keeping it.
No, that's what I'm saying, though. But if this wasn't an either or, which it is at this point, it's an either or, because we're dealing with other issues like ESL program is expanding and other things that we need to address. It has become, unfortunately, an either or and a choice that we have to make. So from a curricular standpoint, we all talked about the fact that we would rather have languages available to children who are younger rather than have it be a high school option.
And I just want to clarify also that it was, when I went back and I reviewed all the letters that went home and all the materials that were sent out, and I watched the board videos and I did all this, the piece that I realized where we had a serious lack of communication was we sent out tons of letters saying French is no longer going to be available in the middle school. We were very clear about that. Like, this is happening. We see this coming down the pike. We're trying to problem solve for it. We want you to know that next year may not be available for your students. When we got to the point where it was clear we couldn't find the teacher, it was like, okay, so now it's not available for your students. The part that we didn't clarify, and that if I had a time machine, I'd go back and we'd clarify, and I'd put a reminder on my phone to say 2 years from now, send out that other letter. We didn't clarify that it was going to impact the high school.
Right,
so when I look at all that, but hold on. So the really crucial part here is with that unintended lack of communication, we never made it clear. Our intention is only to ever run two language programs in the high school. Mm-hmm. We're starting Mandarin. Yep. We're hiring this Mandarin teacher because our intention is now we are going to run a 6 through 12 Mandarin program, and the phase out of French is going to continue as that cohort of students move through. We did say it at the board table. It was discussed, but it was not communicated effectively, and I will completely take onus for that. I think Dr. Taylor will join me in that. I think if we had done that effectively, we wouldn't see this turmoil.
No, but I think that people's perspectives change also. Like, I feel like back then had a different understanding of things and a different perspective. Look, my kids don't even take French, right. But I feel like you can learn French to a proficient degree in 4 years.
And again,
and you cannot do that with Mandarin.
But what the point I'm trying to make is, on some level, that argument becomes esoteric because we cannot simply afford to run 3 language programs in the high school. We just can't afford it.
So
we haven't been able to afford it, as Mr. Krieger has said, decades. We put the Hebrew in because it was a bizarre negotiation between someone who wanted to start a charter school that was going to cost us $1 million. Yeah. So if you've given me the option of $1 million for a charter school or $70,000 for a Hebrew program, I'm going to take the $70,000 if it's going to stave off the $1 million. That's the only reason we ever ended up with 3 languages in the high school in the last decade. Right. The district made a decision, a board long before we ever even moved to this town, that in a district this size, it is impossible to maintain 3 languages. And I wish I did believe that even with the help of Rutgers, we could do it. It doesn't seem viable to me. That said, I've been in communication with the folks who are concerned about this decision. I've offered that we could have a meeting over the summer so we can continue to discuss it. If that leads somewhere, great. But I think with the information that we have at our disposal right now, it's this kind of concrete decision. We couldn't find the decision, or we couldn't find the decision. We couldn't find the teacher. We made a decision 2 years ago. We ineffectively communicated the piece about it rolling up into the high school. If I could undo that and redo that, I absolutely would. But teaching 3 languages in the high school for numerous reasons, which Dr. Taylor just went through, scheduling, finance, there are all these moving pieces where it may sound from one perspective like, well, if we just do A, B, and C, if we sat Dr. Taylor and the supervisor and the principal and everybody in the room, they'd be like, but what about D, E, F, G, H, I, J? There's more to putting a program like that together. And I'm sorry, Rob, with that.
Well, and looking at it in the immediate short term for next year, Right now, we're not expanding Chinese in the high school next year, but we're talking about.
Says who?
Right now, what we have is Mandarin 1 and Mandarin 2. We have no plans to have a Mandarin 3, or Mandarin 3
But
hasn't
there'd
been
be more
offered.
students. There'll be another whole cohort of students moving up.
Actually, we have a heritage, Mandarin heritage
In the middle school.
program. Right, but that's part of what we're doing is we're building the program. So we're having, right, it's
So,
on the
right-
agenda for tonight. So,
Right-
so that's
okay.
part of it.
Right now, what I hear is that we're taking away French 1, largely based on the idea that we're afraid that if we started a French 1 student now, they might get to French 2 or French 3, and then we might not be able to successfully find a teacher for them at that point.
And it's not even just
And-
that. It's, again, it's all these things, you can boil it
It's
down and say it's
budget,
just this,
right,
but there are multiple
We have a budget
factors.
shortfall for ESL, not necessarily for French, and we're talking about expanding Chinese in the middle school, but right now I don't see anything in terms of the expansion of the Mandarin program in the high school that, other than unless there's something on the program for tonight that I had missed, but none of the students were able to sign up for that. Right now we have 2 Mandarin 1 and Mandarin 2 in the high school, and we have all those different French classes. I don't see a reason to start the phase out this year when we're still talking about alternatives. If you're going to sit down with the people that came up with this other proposal sometime this summer, in the interim, let's leave French as it is.
Scott, do you want to address
Yeah,
that?
we're not, I mean, it's something that Darcy and I actually discussed on the phone earlier today. What if we waited 1 year? We'd be kicking the can down the road at that point. So even if in 2020, 2021, we went with the plan, which at first I thought was a viable plan, bring in Rutgers, push down Ms. Hobbs into the 8th grade, we're still going to incur costs, whether it's next year or the following year. And the costs, by the way, that I mentioned, I don't see going away regardless of what the outcome of the alternative plan is. You're still looking at likely opening up a 6th period, which costs $18,000, and compensating Rutgers on some level at a very conservative number, $8,000, which was thrown out there by folks who proposed the plan. So, I mean, every year, in the last couple of years, I've been dealing with $1.2 million budget deficits, and I'm cutting programs like home ec, and I'm letting go of teachers, and class sizes are going up at Bartle. I can't afford to spend $26,000. That's a part-time teacher. So whether we do it now or we do it in 2 years, it's still a problem that we're going to deal with.
Scott, you mentioned Bridgewater is a district that is combining with Rutgers initiative. Is that on a French program at Bridgewater?
No, it's an Italian. I believe it's an Italian program.
Italian.
Okay, so we do have our budget to deal with and a large agenda, so I would like to move on at this point. Thank you, Dr. Taylor, for going through all of that and for putting that up. You'll put that up on the website later today, I assume. Thank you.
That'll be up tonight.
Darcy,
Great.
excuse me, I do have a question. You have offered the folks who came up with that proposal to start
Yeah.
meeting with
Yeah, I said
the
that
board,
earlier.
with you
Oh,
and
that's
the
fine.
chairs of the committees?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so then next on our agenda, 9, 10, and 11 are corrections to the minutes and the approval of the minutes, which number 11 will get updated for our voting session next week. Because lucky us, we get three weeks of meetings in a row. So does anybody have any questions about either of the corrections? And you can't have questions about the approval of the minutes because they're not there yet, but. Okay, Zayu, that brings us to you, and you're by yourself this time. Last time Avery was by herself, and today it's you.
Yep. And
You guys are like tag teaming.
10 minutes left before he goes home to cram for AP.
Oh, really?
I think I can stay until 9, it'll be fine.
Come on.
So you has an AP test tomorrow, so he asked if he could leave at 8:30.
Yes, of course.
I'll leave at 9 instead, it's fine.
You're the best. But you better get a 5 on
This
the
is so
AP test.
scintillating.
Yeah, of course.
What are you taking tomorrow? AP what?
AP Spanish.
Good luck.
Fun. Yep. Okay, so for the high school, DECA had an amazing trip to Orlando, Florida, which is why I wasn't here last time. Our Learn and Earn manual, which talks about the DECA store, was a top 10 international finalist. And the 14th, the progress reports are coming out for the high school. For sports, on April 30th, boys tennis won against South River. On May 3rd, boys tennis won against Piscataway, and on May 4th, baseball won a league game against East Brunswick Tech. And coming up, May 7th is a softball away game at South Amboy. May 8th is boys tennis against Old Bridge. It's a home game. And May 8th, it's also a baseball game against Piscataway Tech, which is an away game. For Bartle's testing this week for the NJSLA. There's also a PDO plant sale this week. And this week's Teacher Appreciation Week, and this Friday is the Bartle Run for Fun. And for the middle school, there's softball games on May 7th, 8th, 10th, 14th, and 15th. The 7th is against South River, it's a home game, and the 8th is New Brunswick, it's an away game.
Great. Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions today for Zayu? No? Okay, thank you. And good luck on your exam tomorrow. Dr. Taylor, that brings us to you.
So tonight is the night that the Finance Committee, the BA, and I are going to recommend the final budget to the board for approval. Been a tough process. I'd like to go over it with everybody again. Then I'm going to show a couple of slides that are very detailed. But I assure you that the slides that you're going to see will be on the website as well tonight. I won't be leaving here until about midnight because I'm going to make sure everything I'm telling you is going to be up there will be up there. Let me just start by reminding everybody that we engaged in a very, very thorough process to get to where we are today. We met in December and in January with the each leader, supervisors, and principals in roughly 2-hour sessions. Can you see if I stand here? Awesome. Then the Finance Committee met in the evening to continue speaking with the supervisors and principals about their budgets line by line. And then we met with the Irving PTO as an opportunity for anybody from the community who wants to come out to ask questions about the budget. And finally, we've had now 3 discussions. Tonight, we'll be wrapping it up about the budget itself. So we don't just go from start to finish in a flash. We actually take it step by step. As I've stated before, we have several challenges facing us, and it mostly boils down to increased costs to support those kids who have special needs, not by their doing, but because mostly we are not getting the state aid that we deserve to get. On the website is also, in the news section, a wonderful presentation that our board president shared last meeting that, thanks to data in part from the Ed Law Foundation, shows you just how much money we're owed. It's in the millions. We're not talking hundreds of thousands that we are being underfunded. We have a fabulous special education program, thanks to a fabulous special education director and team and supporting team teachers. And that has attracted kids, perhaps, to come here for the services. So these are our challenges, and we're not seeing the revenue we need to deal with the expenditures. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, for the last couple of years, I've had, for whatever reason, this number keeps coming up, a roughly $1.2 million gap to cover. And it's been a tough go at trying to narrow that gap. So these are the 2 slides that I have not yet showed the public or the board. I'm going to talk about them, and then you can download them if you'd like to read them closely. In the one column under preliminary presentation March 18th, I list the points I made about certain categories of the budget. And in the last column, final presentation May 6th, tonight, I tell you what the change has been to those points that I made about the various categories. So for instance, whereas back in March, we felt that we could reduce 4.5 paraprofessional positions to narrow that $1.2 million gap, after deconstructing schedules with principals, the special ed director and supervisor over the course of about 3 weeks, we came to understand that in fact we need to not only keep the positions, but as you'll see in another cell, we need to add paraprofessional positions, mostly because what we weren't accounting for back in March are the needs of the programs that we began at Irving School over the last couple of years to accommodate all those students, particularly those who were nonverbal or who were exhibiting behavioral challenges, who are now moving up to Bartle. So whereas we were going to reduce 4.5 paraprofessional positions, we are now restoring those positions. The next row, titled Additional Teaching Positions, indicates back in March that we didn't anticipate needing more staff. If anything, we were cutting staff. We had to cut 2 teachers at Bartle, and unfortunately the home economics program. Now what we realize is we actually have to hire an additional part-time special education teacher at Bartle, because when deconstructing those schedules and taking a much closer look at the student needs, we recognize that we're going to be short a part-time special ed teacher. So here you now have, since between March 18th and, well, soon after March 18th, another deficit. We were now, whereas we had balanced the budget March 18th, we found ourselves a few weeks later at about a $250,000 hole once again because of these additional needs that we discovered. Fortunately, and unfortunately, on the unfortunate side, we're losing some really strong, high-quality educators. But on the plus side for the budget, because of resignations and retirements, we actually have been able to begin to recoup some of the money. We have less expenditures because of folks who've retired or have resigned, who are making usually top of the salary scale money. We were able to use some of those savings in our expenditures to offset the $250,000 deficit that we were left with after March 18th. March 18th, there were 3 known retirements and no resignations. Soon after, all of a sudden, I remember coming back from break and finding on my desk at least 1 resignation letter and 2 retirement letters. We had an additional 3 retirements for a total of 6 retirees this year, the most that I've experienced since I've been here. And on top of that, whereas we had no resignations March 18th, 4 individuals have resigned for various reasons. So again, before I get to the last 2 rows, let me point out that there's a savings there because these are folks who are likely making a whole lot more money than we might be offering in salary to new staff who come on board. And that difference is something which we can now recoup and use to offset the $250,000 deficit we had after March 18th. We also found a way, since March 18th, in order to close this last gap, this deficit gap, we found a way to strip away another 6th period at the middle school in this case. So now we're saving another about $18,000 since March 18th that we can use to offset that $250,000. And finally, we have decided, and it was a difficult decision as a finance committee, and I, and the BA, of course, to change the way we approach some of our long-term substitute needs, whereas in the past, whenever a teacher would take leave or a para would take leave, we would conduct a full court search and hire somebody from outside and put that person on the salary guide and pay that person benefits. Now we're applying certain parameters that would have us not automatically looking for people from outside to come in to replace teachers on leave, which means we're not offering them health benefits, which can sometimes cost up to $30,000 an individual. Or salary on the salary guide. Instead, we're going to be relying on substitutes in our pool. We have a number of trusted individuals. I'm sure the teachers in the audience know, in every building, there's at least one substitute who is your go-to individual who you always ask for, you always request. We may be looking at some of those individuals to help us out with the 1, 2, 3, or 4 month short to long-term leave needs. By doing that, we save additional money. Something around, I think, about, what we are approximating is about $45,000 in savings. Now, the next slide actually shows you the total numbers. Even though I itemized some of those numbers for you verbally, here you see in writing what the numbers tell us. March 18th, we didn't anticipate staff increases beyond that number, $412,000 and change. All of a sudden, May 6th, as a result of all of that schedule vetting and whatnot, we were now finding ourselves needing $686,000 in additional staff. Fortunately, we were able to find ways to save, thanks to retirements and resignations and other means to close that gap. So whereas our staff savings on March 18th were $473,000 and change, now we're saving about $747,000 and change. Now, unfortunately, what this means is we have to go forward with our plan to reduce staff at Bartle. We reduced 2 teachers. Fortunately, because of one of the resignations, Personnel Committee is fully aware of this, we're actually able to keep one of the current hires on staff. So unfortunately, there was one person who had to be reduced in force as opposed to 2 at Bartle. And as hard as we tried, and I credit the members of the board who met with me numerous occasions. We had a board committee chair summit, personnel chair, finance chair, curriculum chair, equity and excellence chair summit to try to salvage the home ec program. But once we found ourselves in a $250,000 hole, to be in compliance, to make sure we are just following IEPs and doing what we need to do, there was just no way to save that program. We're obviously doing everything we can with Ms. Mitchell to make sure that we can support her going forward. I should say 2 words before I go to the next few slides and wrap up. One, the home ec classroom will remain open. I actually just had a discussion with who will be the incoming middle school GLOW teacher today. The teacher asked me if she'll be able to use the ovens and all the materials for her middle school GLOW students. And I said, absolutely, that's the intent. I verified that our high school GLOW teachers can push their students into that program and offer them some of the basic home ec instruction that the kids didn't receive. It's not required that they have a special certification to do that, but we're going to keep the equipment there so that they have it to their avail. I also want to note that I had a few conversations and had some email back and forth with Mr. Lassiter about doing more to market the VOTEC baking program. Slots are limited, but Mr. Lassiter has been marketing more than he ever has that program to make sure we can get as many of our kids into the baking program that's offered in East Brunswick and Piscataway as we can. That's a program that'll be offered to our kids who were committed to potential culinary arts careers, or at least post-secondary work. So we're going to keep focused on that. The last couple of slides are just reminders. I shared these with the community and the board back on March 18th. This is how the budget will impact the resident. Ultimately, the impact on the resident in terms of the tax levy will be 2.73%. That is a combined increase of taxes on the school district's part, as well as the benefit we are receiving from having refinanced our debt service. So it amounts to 2.73%. Thanks to some ratables that it did increase, the average home is going to be assessed approximately $123. And by the way, average home is based on a value of $150,000. So, so these are the
assessment value. Assessed value. Some of the largest homes in town are assessed at 150.
Boy, you all jumped on that. Thank you.
Mine is half of that. I mean, that's a lot of money.
Reassessment, and yeah, but that's for another discussion. I also pointed this out. I just want to be sure that we are all understanding how we got to 2.92. That's 2.92 is the actual number that we are taxing the resident. 2.73 is what we feel because you add in the refinance debt. But the 2.92 comes from the allowance for us to increase the tax levy by a certain percentage to offset annual increased health costs. It's one of the only allowances the state provides school boards to go over the 2% cap. If you want to read what I just shared with you, and also obtain my March 18th presentation, do comparison, just go to the school district website, brand new redesigned website, go to the Board of Ed drop-down menu, and I have a whole page just set up for the 2019-2020 budget. With that, I'll open up for any questions the board might have, or any other comments the Finance Committee wants to make.
I'd like to make some comments as the chair of the Finance and Facilities Committee. So first, I'd like to thank the committee, and that's Rob Magaziner and Darcy Cimarusti. We met probably 10 times, including this past week. We had Finance Committee meetings before the last board meeting and before the last meeting before that, spending more than an hour and a half each time, and during the day late last week to go over this budget. We met with the administrators, and I do want to thank Dr. Taylor and Linda Hoflet for their support. We got giant notebooks with every line in the district so that we could review every single line. This is not a time of any extra money. It's a miracle. It's a miracle that our administration was able to give us a budget that met under that 2% or 2.9% with the exemption. And I'll repeat that, it's a miracle. The miracle was that we were able to do it with such a small effect on program. The home economics program, we spent many, many hours trying to find the extra money. We couldn't find it. That program obviously suffered. But we did everything in our power to keep the programs and to keep the class sizes and to keep the staff. You know, there were a large number of staff here a month and a half or 2 months ago concerned, and we actually put staff back. So there is a reversion to the mean, and that is we had the retirements and the resignations. We haven't had more than 1 or 2 in the 4 years I've been on the board. And this year we have 5 or 6 or 7. So it caught up. And without that, we would have been looking at supplies, we would have been looking at programs. We did have savings from the new computer initiative. There's a minimum savings of at least $13,000 by leasing equipment rather than buying equipment. So that's a saving for the district, and it also gives the district a more equitable program for the students. So that every student has from 6 to 12 has a computer. That is will have savings. Actually, we'll have more than $13,000 savings, but we won't know the exact numbers until probably the end of the summer. But we did everything we could, and it's sadly, given the state funding not getting better, if you read the newspapers, you'll see the districts that are laying off 20 teachers, 40 teachers, 60 teachers, 80 teachers, closing schools, closing programs, wholesale, and we've managed to, for the most part, to stave that off. So again, I want to thank our administration and the committee and the whole board for working so hard on this. And hope is perhaps with some changes in the state, in programs they're looking at the legislature, we can get more aid, get better aid, and make things better next year. So again, thank you all.
Thanks, Mark. Does anybody have any questions for Scott, Linda, or Mark?
One of the first questions I had, over at Bartle, I know we're down to 1 RIF, but are we still looking at the same class size increases?
So actually, so it's 2 RIFs, and yes, class size is on average of 24 in grades 2 to 5. But I'll clarify that because of a resignation, only 1 person lost a position. So it's still 2 RIFs, 1 person leaves, but the other person fills that resignee's position.
And then through this process, one of the things that I looked at when I was going back through some of the video, was there any consideration to looking at cuts within the administration?
Administrators?
Yeah.
Yes, there was. There was. In fact, it was discussed in finance, I think, at least one point. Concern, of course, is that we're making do with what we've got because of the evaluation loads and new Achieve NJ law that took effect. And we are recognizing what the staff asked us for in a survey when I first came on board, and that's to have content area supervisors. I mean, you can't do it without principals. We already, we recently added an assistant principal at the high school because we had safety and security reasons. So you'd be potentially looking at supervisor cuts, but that would take us back to a place at which we were before, back in the era prior to my coming here, which was a tumultuous time. So we didn't want to revert back to that, but it was considered.
But we did look at administration and decided that we couldn't. We took it very seriously, and our HPEA members came and discussed it, and we had done it before, but we also took it seriously after, and had discussions on multiple occasions.
Okay. One very strong reservation I have going into this budget is the one-to-one computers for 6th grade through 12th grade. I understand, and now I got numbers from Mark just a couple of days ago, which laid it out pretty succinctly how we could go with a 950 computer lease and actually save money as long as we don't repair any computers that are moved down to Bartle and Irving for a year, and and then use a lot of that lease towards the computers that the teachers need, and then the computers for the Fuse Lab and for Glow, and for other purposes here and there. But I still have very strong reservations that the district as a whole is not ready to go one-to-one. That handing everyone a computer doesn't necessarily equal equity, because just because everyone has a computer doesn't mean they have the same resources at home, the same Wi-Fi at home, a printer at home, a scanner at home, the resources that would enable them to use it the same way, a parental figure that keeps their brother or sibling from taking it away from them as soon as it gets to home. So I don't feel like it's going full bore for 7 grades out of the gate makes sense. Other districts that I've seen have taken it, a step-by-step approach to make sure that they're phasing it in. And I think that might be a cost savings to the district to look at it and go, where's the best place to start, and how many grades do we start with? Or do we really just go with throwing it all at all 7th grades?
I would only give one small answer. I think there's a lot of answers. I first started seriously considering this, which I didn't 2 and 3 years ago.
Thank you for looking at it, though.
No, you're welcome. I first started looking at this seriously, and again after being strongly opposed to it 3 and 4 years ago.
And I'll add, the whole finance committee was. When this came to the finance committee 2 years ago in the budget, we all just kind of went, because the cost was astronomical.
Right, but over the winter break, I was with a family that I know in Edison, and the kids were walking around, and they're high school students. They were walking around with their iPads, and they were Edison iPads. 2 of them, a senior and a sophomore.
Max.
I'm sorry, Max, right. And I asked them about it, and I asked their parents about it, and they said, at this point, every student in Edison has a computer. And I said, what? They're not all Macs. Some of the younger students have Chromebooks. But every student in the, I don't know middle school and high school, because these were high school students, but perhaps middle school and high school had a Mac. And I asked them about it, and they said, yeah, we started this a year or 2 ago. And every student in the district has it, and they phased it in. They phased it in, though, middle school and high school first, and then down at the elementary schools. So I asked them for their literature. What did they get? What did they get from the district? So they got rules and regulations, but they also got documents on what they're giving out, how to use them, what's the purpose, how they're being used in the classroom, the curriculum savings, the supply savings, all the rationales. And I was honestly kind of floored. But again, it's a lease, and they do 3 and 4 year leases. So I felt if Edison can do it, Highland Park can do it. And frankly, not as well. Somehow they have a budget, we don't have a budget. But they had enough budget to be giving out MacBooks and iPads and Chromebooks to everyone. I felt if we can, they should. And we have an excellent STEM supervisor who worked in a district where they did the same. I always forget the name of the district, sorry. Madison. And they did the same 4 years ago. I just felt if they can do it, we can do it. And after the administration looked, I didn't personally look at all the details. And the administration said, yeah, we can handle this, and the costs coming from Linda's office are reasonable. It seemed just the right thing to do in this day and age. We are in 2019, and we should be able to do this. And I do understand it won't make everyone equal, Rob. I completely agree, but it will go a long way for many students to help them. So that's why we did it.
Well, I just want to add that Dr. Nicosia, that your points are very valid, your concerns are very valid. It's a big deal, it's a big initiative. We're talking about using the summer months to launch it. Dr. Nicosia will be here June 3rd at that meeting to make a more detailed presentation about what the logistics are going to look like. So please address your concerns to her then.
Yeah, but that'll be after we vote on the budget.
I mean, I'll speak for the Finance Committee, but I hope I'm being accurate when I say if worst came to worst and she bombed the presentation and everybody around this table said, uh-oh, we made a mistake, we would use those funds. I mean, I don't know how it would work with the Department of Education, but we would use those funds and reallocate them for some other better purpose, potentially. I don't know, whatever. Frankly, I tell you what happened with those funds. We'd revert them back to the old method of buying and fixing new Chromebooks and repairing existing ones.
But we don't anticipate that happening. And I just want to add that this didn't just come out of the Finance Committee. This also came out of the, Scott, help me, I forget all the names of all the committees. The Central District, which is comprised of teachers, staff, administrators, board members, in our discussions about how do we fix some of the equity problems that we have. And of course, no one is under the delusion that this makes all children now equal and all children are going to be on equal footing. But this is a step everyone felt, administrators, staff, board members, and teachers, in the right direction. So
I tell you, I wouldn't be, I'm sorry. I'm probably alone among board members in thinking that I wouldn't be too sad if we just banned computer homework completely. No online homework, no computers. If you need to type a paper, we'll find typewriters for you, something like that. But that wasn't happening. And, I'm an outlier in that regard. And, maybe that's not the right thing to happen. I know Mark, for example, feels like that really limits our students to do that. But unless we really ban all online homework and all computerized homework, we're in a situation where some students cannot do the work. And I don't know how we can continue to move in that direction. I mean, if we don't do it with all 6 grades, then we're going to have 7th and 8th graders. We're going to have 5th, whoever, 6th graders who can't do their homework. And
I think we're still going to have students who can't do their homework because they're going to go home and they still don't have Wi-Fi.
But you have that problem with paper and pencil. You have that because kids don't have the adult supervision at home. You have that because the kids don't have the opportunity. There's always going to be those inequities.
Well, the Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi, as we've talked about, Dr. Nicosia is going to train the teachers on how to make many of the apps downloadable. Right. Now, you can't do research, obviously, if you don't have Wi-Fi. You can go to Dunkin' Donuts. You can stay at the computer lab after school. Right. There are things you can do. It doesn't resolve the problem with research. But in terms of writing papers, for example, Google Docs can be used offline. Apparently, many staff members, I also do not know how to do this, but we're going to get training on this, presumably. So the Wi-Fi thing is a problem, and we've explored many routes to try to get community Wi-Fi going, and it hasn't happened yet. Right. It's all wound up being too expensive, or we haven't gotten the sort of interest from other potential partners. So teachers are still going to have to limit the amount of internet research that they are assigning for homework. That's just going to have to continue happening. But otherwise, we're going to hopefully be learning how to make the Google suite of apps available offline. Is that correct, Scott?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it is. We even have a tutorial floating already to the teachers that was sent out about how to do that, prepping them.
Great.
I wanted to add something to what Scott said. for your benefit, Rob. I think if during the summer it becomes clear that we can't roll out the equipment properly to all the students, my view of the fallback, it's just my view, but I think it's a rational view of the fallback, would be to roll it out to the 9 through 12 and then roll it out. And I even heard this in a meeting, it may have even been at this table, that they would get rolled out first to 9 through 12 and then more slowly to 6 through 8. So it's not like every machine will 100% be put in everyone's hand on whatever that day is in September. If things go well, that will happen. If things don't go as well, perhaps 6 through 8 might get the machines a little later. But I think the intention is that every student in 6 through 12, early in the year, as early as possible in the year, will get a loaner machine from the district.
Within this lease, is there an accommodation for any of the students who where Chromebook is inappropriate and an iPad is the better choice for those students?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Well, we are
If
a
it's an
Google Apps
IEP,
for
then-
education.
Yeah, if
That
that's in a
would
kid's
be-
IEP, that would have to happen anyway.
We do have certain
It's not
students.
part of the lease, it would be an add-on to
But
the
that would
lease.
be
Right.
no matter what.
It's an IP, it's mandated.
Those kids would continue, we would continue to pay for iPads for
Yeah,
those students.
I mean, I have a kid who gets her own computer because of her IEP. It's been a complete game changer for her because it's hers. She gets to take it with her back and forth, and it's just got her stuff on it. I mean, it is really this complete, before where she couldn't complete homework at all because she had to be required to use different things and log in here and then there, and then it was too much for her. But to have the one computer that's just hers, that's got all her stuff on it, opened totally different doors. So I am confident that this is going to be beneficial for many of our students.
And I do want to add that my two young friends in Edison, they talked about this as it changing their lives, that there was one computer in their home, and they got their own machine to walk around with, and it changed their lives and what they could do in school, especially for the younger daughter, who was okay in school. But she really started to shine once she got her own machine, and she didn't have to fight with her sister about sharing and just everything. And so I'm very, very hopeful. I'm really, really hopeful. And I said to someone, if the only thing that our group, and with me as chair, accomplishes in my time on the board is to make this rollout happen,
Right.
I think that would be time well served.
And anytime we've had these meetings, finance meetings, and we've had the principals in the room, they've known that they could save tremendous amounts of money when we get to this point because of the textbooks that they don't have to re-up. And there will be additional savings that come with this. Like the principals' faces light up when they understand that all of their students are going to have access to this, and it's not going to be playing the cart game of who's got a cart and who doesn't have a cart. But also at the same time, I want to make it clear that whenever we've met with Dr. Nicosia or we've met with any of the principals, and we'll reiterate it when Dr. Nicosia is here, nobody's intention that's been involved in these discussions is to turn it into our kids are on screens the whole time that they're in their classrooms, or all of their homework is now online. That's not the intention. We'll reiterate with her, we'll monitor it. That's not the intention.
Also, I just remembered a lot of our conference workshops that we went to in October. They centered around students having their own laptops or iPads so that they could get their work done during the school day. And they could also create websites, personalize different things so that at the end of their time in middle school or high school, they had created kind of like, a marketing tool for themselves. And so it was like an online journal type thing. There's just so many different conference workshops that I saw personally down at the board conference that centered around the curriculum that would be benefiting like the one-to-one. So it's just kind of a given. The way that they talk about these things in the world of education, I mean, it's very, very different than the way that I remember. And it's not necessarily antisocial or, taking away from any kind of tactile learning, because we're talking about middle schoolers and high schoolers. But I can tell you that going down to the board conference does keep you in touch with what the rest of the state is doing in a way that you can't do when you sit at the table here and just talk amongst yourselves,
And things are different than they were 6 or 7 years ago, where
Oh,
to
yeah.
roll out a program like this meant purchasing all that equipment and hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars. Now you can roll out a program like this less expensively than you can buy the equipment. So it seemed like an absolute no-brainer. Like, we're far past the days of, $1 million worth of iPads in a closet somewhere.
Right.
Like, that's not really happening anymore. Like, the system has figured out those kinks, and it's much more, Mark's done, I want to thank Mark for kind of doing a lot of legwork there on the, all of the different policies we're going to need to put in place. So we'll, as a board, we will work together to put all the policies in place and make sure that as we roll this out, we know what we're doing.
Yeah, I
Michelle,
think that's a critical point, Darcy. The fact that we are moving in this direction is actually, due to the efficiency of the program, a savings, slight savings, but a savings over the cost of what we had been doing before. What we had been doing before was costly. And it was such a cost that there was a motivation at times over the years to not do what we were supposed to do by providing or fixing or what have you. And so ultimately, the computers that we have, over time, are in less good shape year after year after year. So this is a way for us to keep up to date and to do it in a very efficient way. So I think it's a really good plan.
Can I just ask that at some point in the near future, and I know this is probably late in the game here, but if we could be presented with a plan, I guess from Dr. Nicosia, just really outlining, specific phase-ins, like really showing us exactly where we want to be at in a couple of years and where we're starting and the, timing of all of that.
And I have to say, in the couple of committees that I've worked with her on, she's remarkably good at doing that. Like, where I'm on the committee that's discussing the detracking of the middle school math program, she's remarkably good at setting agendas, setting goals, and setting the benchmarks to meet those goals. So I don't think that'll be a problem.
Yeah.
Good.
Michelle, I know a few years ago, one of the things that you had brought up was about having Chromebooks and Google being able to access all of this data on our kids. And my understanding is that still hasn't necessarily gone away. Do we know if Dr. Nicosia is looking into safeguards for the same thing?
Google has stopped crawling, if I could just interject with the only piece of information I have, which is that Google has now committed to no longer crawling email, I think, or docs. I can't remember which it is. So there's one that they used to crawl with their automated spiders, but they don't anymore.
I like that, crawl with automated spiders.
Yeah.
I don't even know this language.
So that obviously does not take care of all the concerns. And I personally will be telling my kids not to put down anything too personal. I don't want their addresses on there. I don't want their phone numbers on there.
They're going to have to. Well,
Hopefully Genesis is more secure. My kid's phone number's on Genesis. It should not be going on his Google Docs. I mean,
Crawling issues with Genesis.
No, it's a really insular type program. But so my I just wanted to say that from my understanding, nothing much has changed other than our awareness of what is potentially out in the world without our permission. So we can only keep private what we can keep private, to a certain degree. So just having the awareness that is something that does happen when you put something out onto the web, that it does exist outside of yourself. That's really all we can do, to be aware that that's happening and to be, reserved in our sharing. So if we are doing this type of schoolwork right now, which we have Google Classroom, we've had it. Nothing changes if we give students computers to use, but it does give us the opportunity to have the conversation about safety and privacy. So, just like we would in, for example, a sex ed program, we would not only talk about, one type of behavior, we would talk about all the potential behaviors and the different, risks involved. So I feel hopeful that it opens up the opportunity for a conversation about security and privacy, and that our students are not naive enough to think that just because it's on this tiny little laptop that it's private. It really is an important conversation to have with kids at this age.
Sure. And Scott, could you have Dr. Nicosia address that in her presentation next week? What security is already built in through Google Classroom. I seem to remember there being different, like the Google that we use being different than the Google Classroom, and there's being different firewalls, and John could probably speak to some of this too, because the kids don't have Google addresses, they have hpschools.net addresses, so I think there are a couple of firewalls built in there automatically, so it's not the same as, me with my dorky, hi, darcycimaresti@gmail.com. It's not the same thing.
It'll probably be helpful for her to help you visualize by demonstrating on the projector some of the things
Yeah,
we're
whatever
talking
she can
about,
do to
if
kind of
possible.
I'm sure she has a lot more information that she at her disposal than I have, with my very limited
she's
knowledge.
been very
on it.
responsive to a handful of other questions that I
Yeah,
had too.
no, okay.
And then,
All right.
really
so-
quick one for Mark and the finance, in relation to the track and field turf replacement.
Totally separate. That's not in our operating
It's a
budget.
movement of
capital.
capital funds.
Right, yeah,
And
but it's not in our operating budget.
It's only because we didn't move those capital funds into any other portion of the operating budget.
No, it's never in the operating
No,
budget.
it's
It's never
capital.
in the operating budget.
No,
It's
to
only
build a
the-
new track, it's only in the capital budget, and it's only there in the case that the county and the borough
and the borough.
cooperate and pay for 3/4 of it.
Okay.
As we believe they are supposed to do.
Oh, yes, they are happily going to fund 3/4 of it, to the best of our belief.
Well, yeah, it's a community field, right?
is a
and
community field.
that's how it was built. It was built with that intention, and there were documents
Correct.
that were drawn at the time that
Right.
the borough was to be putting money aside, just as we were to be putting money aside in capital reserve, so it doesn't come out of our operating budget, because we'd be in really big trouble if it needed to come out
Well,
of
the
our
fact is,
operating
it
budget.
could come out this year, or if we don't have the money from them this year, it could come out next year, but that's where it would come from.
Over the 10 or 11 years that it's been in place, has there ever been any follow-up impact testing to see whether or not the integrity of the field is?
Yes.
Constant.
Okay.
Yes,
year.
several
And
times.
Where are we at now?
Bad.
Okay.
That's why we're talking about replacing it.
It's not terminally bad at this moment, but it's bad.
But it's
Linda-
not what it was.
Linda has done the
Linda has
studies. and-
They do annual testing.
Oh, it's annual.
Yes, and it's not unsafe.
Right.
It's wearing down.
It's just getting close.
Getting close, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I had a quick question about the computers thing again. So, if I remember correctly from the last time, there's a special fund that the computers are funded by. What is it again? Or
No.
Is
That
it
just,
like-
that is,
isn't it like?
huh?
At least.
Are you not allowed
It
to?
does come out of our operating budget. That does come out of our operating budget.
But you're not allowed to use it for like anything else if you're not using it for the computers. Is it not possible to use it for like fixing up the music program, like buying new instruments or anything like that, to like instead of buying the computers or doing anything else with that money?
Boards set priorities, absolutely.
Right. Of course, we could use it for something else, but we've chosen to use it for the computer equipment and to save money against what we originally had proposed to spend.
But because like, so the proposal right now is to buy 950 or like lease 950 Chromebooks with insurance and everything like that. But if you were able to lease like 800 instead, that 150 Chromebooks, even if it's like $20 a year, would be able to buy an instrument or something for like another club or band or like orchestra, anything like that. So I'm just still not 100% understanding why we can't buy less than the proposed 950, which is more than the number of students who definitely need a Chromebook.
Well, not to avoid your question, but it isn't quite 950 in total. There are a number of computers that are built in that are laptops, which will be going to teachers who don't have laptops. So that we felt that, of course, was important as well. But to answer your question, we felt it was appropriate to roll out the correct number of machines for the 6th through 12th grade, and to not leave any student out, with that, whether that be all of the 6th grade or all of the 7th grade, or students who raise their hand and say, I have a computer. We decided to roll it out, and again, to save money for the district, and perhaps next year, and we have had this discussion, in fact, with some of the folks in the music program. We have had a discussion about at least evaluating doing something similar for music, but not at this time.
But like, just rolling out the computers for everyone, even the students who have their own device like me. It just feels like a waste of money. I know that the program will save money for the board, but if we lease even less computers, it will definitely save more money for the board.
And I think Dr. Nicozio will address some of that in her presentation at the next meeting, because I think she has very clear ideas about doing this kind of a program versus a bring your own device program and how that's going to look. So I think I think a lot of your questions will be answered when she comes and does her presentation.
Okay, thank you.
And I certainly hear your point, and I think it's an interesting one, right? So if we had different student reps here, they might have different priorities, right? Their priority might not be musical instruments. It might be an additional sports team, or it may be something for field trips, or do you know what I mean? Like, everyone brings their own priorities to the table, and that's why we have 9 board members, so we can all kind of, and we try to meet with all of the administrators, and we meet with all of the supervisors, because we have to take what everybody wants to see for the district, and we have to somehow boil that down to priorities for the entire district, right? So I might not get everything I want. Dr. Nikozia might not get everything she wants. Mark might not get everything what he wants. So it's about setting priorities, and this is a priority that we've set for the district. Over the years, the district's technological capacity, does that sound right? Has really been very chaotic, for lack of a better word. And if you want to go back 5 or 6 years, the lack of technology in the district was used to make some really big shifts in our, because we weren't ready for the 21st century. So we're not really a 21st century ready kind of board, but we also don't want our students to be so dramatically behind their peers, which is kind of where I think we all felt we were kind of heading. And past boards did not make this a priority and would very strictly limit the amount of money that would go towards technology. And it got us in a place where we really did have dramatically outdated Wi-Fi, as you've addressed many times, dramatically outdated computers. We're trying to address that in the most economical way possible while trying to create an equitable environment for all of our students. So.
But I think even though everyone has their different priorities, I feel like everyone would want to save as much money as possible. So even if it's the money saved doesn't go to musical instruments, I'd be fine as long as we're not wasting the money instead. But I guess I'll ask Dr. Dakota next week about her plans and how she sees the issue in order to.
We did talk I think the last meeting or 2 meetings ago maybe, about how if we did just give computers to students who raised their hand and said they needed a computer, that raises all kinds of problems for staffing. We have to have a staff person who is assigning those computers. It just gets much more complicated. And there's also issues with what's the word I'm looking for? When you're stigmatized, stigma, right. I mean, this person has the basic computer. I have my nice computer. I don't use the Chromebooks because I don't like Chromebooks, so I'm using my Lenovo. At a certain point, I think many board members felt that the advantages of trying to just give out a couple of computers were outweighed by the advantages of not having to deal with the stigma, not having to have a staff member that was going to go through and evaluate everybody's eligibility and and I think I think we came out on the right side of that. But yeah, Dr. Nikozia will, I'm sure, tell us more.
When is she coming exactly again? Scott, wasn't it
Scott
June?
said June 3rd.
June 3rd, right? Yeah, okay.
In 2 more meetings.
Okay, so it's next month.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's what I
Okay, so if no one else has any other questions on the budget, doing a scan of the table, we're going to move on to item number 14, which is 14A is public comment on the 2019-2020 budget. So just to be clear, this is public comment, but it is specifically and only on the budget. So if anyone has comments related to the budget, please come up to the mic.
Good night, Zayu. Good luck.
Thank you.
Bye. Good luck. Take care.
Good luck tomorrow.
You're going to ace it.
Hi, I understand what you said. I'm Anna Pereira. I live at 344 Becker Street. I understand this is about the budget, this budget.
Correct.
I just want to mention, because in a meeting where the budget is presented and the budget issues are raised so many times in connection with French, I'm not going to say it's misleading, but it could create some ambiguities. I want to say that the proposal we put together was one of the co-writers was budget neutral. There were no
Anna,
expenses.
but we're really not talking about that right now. We're talking about the budget presentation and the budget that we're adopting. And you'll have I just want to point out there are 2 more public comment sessions as we would normally have in an agenda, right? Normally, we have two public comment sessions, one after we go through our reporting, and then again at the end. So you'll have both of those times, but this one is specifically set out for the budget. The whole budget, the budget that we're adopting. So if it's any...
This is sort of like our statutory period, right, where we just consider the budget that we're going to adopt and
Yes.
submit to the county.
Correct. Right.
Is,
Cough drops. So I have a whole speech written out. Sorry I came late. Really
Don't
wish
be
I
sorry.
could. So my name's Uchechi. Once again, if you guys don't remember me, I'm the student president of the Highland Park High School, and I've been collecting feedback about the new budget and the stuff that's happening that you guys were discussing about from the students, and I'm here to present that. So good evening to the Board of Education. I was going to say Zayu, but he kind of left. Yeah, the Board of Education earlier said that they tried their best and apologized about the issues that are happening, especially with home ec, but many of the students don't find that to be, aren't really accepting that apology, especially since there's going to be current students, excluding the seniors, current students who aren't going to have home ec and future students who aren't going to have home ec, who need those life skills earlier. You can argue the fact that you can learn that on the internet because this is the 21st century, but not many people do have that accessibility. And earlier, you guys have stated that you're going to use the computer budget, which is giving each student a computer, if I'm correct. I'm not sure. But yes. Many of the students are finding that plan to seem like a huge backfire because some students, I even have a quote from one student saying that, I quote, that I will use that computer only for games or for personal usage and not actually school. So I was, one of my questions is how you're going to be able to monitor if they're actually going to use those computers for school. And another part is that since we do have computers now and there's multiple students who do have their own personal devices that they do bring to school, are you going to only give this computers to students who actually do need it and actually don't have computers at home? And another portion was, well, there has been multiple questions that the students of Highland Park High School have been addressing. Is like every new student in our school going to get a computer? Especially for, I don't know if it's going to be for the high school and the middle school, but is every new student going to get a computer? Okay, I just need to be clarified. I was late,
Yes.
my fault. And yeah, well, honestly, a lot of the students don't really see eye to eye if it's possible to maybe explain that to them, what the budget's going to happen, because a lot of them are out of the loop and they don't know what's happening. I'm even out of the loop and I don't know what's happening at some portions. And that's basically my point. Well, one of my points is actually that Zayu even mentioned this, is that if you can only give the computers to certain kids who actually do need it, because a lot of kids in our school already have personal devices at home or have their own computers that they do bring to school, is it possible to use some of the remaining of the money to fix actual stuff in the school? Because if I remember, there's a lot of broken stuff in the school, like classrooms who have equipment that they do need to teach in school. Some of that stuff is broken that the school actually owns. There's broken ceiling tiles somewhere in the school, and there's also some broken pieces of furniture around the school that do need fixing. So if it's possible to use the remaining money into that portion.
Yeah, of course.
And that's all.
Before you go, first of all, let me make sure everybody knows that Ketchy is our Student Congress president. So when she's speaking, she truly is representing the student body, the high school. Could you do me a favor and email me, I think it was like 3 or 4 questions about the one-to-one computer initiative?
Yeah.
So that I can make sure Dr. Nicosia responds to those questions when she presents. And I don't know how you get things out to your constituents, but you could have them students either tune in on June 3rd at about probably 7:45 to watch Dr. Nicosia's presentation, or they can come back to the recording.
Yep.
And I have one question.
Yes.
You're okay with that? So,
Yeah.
do you think it would behoove Mr. Lassiter and I to meet with students during lunch, put some kind of note out, hey, if you want to talk more about the budget, or it sounds like the one-to-one initiative is one thing, and then there are concerns about money and the budget, and that's another thing.
Yeah.
And I really do love to work with the student body. So maybe it would help if Mr. Lassiter and I had a forum.
Yes, of course. Well, one of the things that our school does have is that we have a student senate where there's our students who come in during period A to actually talk about issues of the school. We're actually going to have one tomorrow, talking about common casual bigotry happening in our school. That's one thing that we're talking about tomorrow. So we do have future senate meetings happening in our school. One of the things is the students who I talked about were the students who weren't comfortable talking to teachers. So that's why they came up to me. But I can try to persuade them to talk to you, Dr. Taylor. I think the people that you can talk to who aren't afraid of adults are the people who are going to student senate.
So sounds like it'd be good for Mr. Lassiter and I to meet with the student senate.
Yes.
And so tomorrow it's a little quick for me to turn things around, but maybe you can email me. When you send me one email with those questions about one-to-one, maybe you could also give me some dates.
Yes.
And I'll reach out to Mr. Lassiter.
And I have two more suggestions, if I may. One, I'd be happy to attend that as well and do the presentation for the Student Senate that I did for the board at the last meeting, which talks about I talked about the state funding issues that we're having, and you heard me wax prophetic about some of those when we brought you along to meet with Senator Dignan. And I know, I'm sorry, I made your head kind of spin a little bit. Yeah, so I'll try to go a little slower and not speak so fast, but I do speak really fast. But I think that may be helpful to them as well, to let them know that this is a larger state issue that we're trying to grapple with and is trickling down to us here at the local level. And certainly if we at the board had our druthers and had the money that we are due from the state, we wouldn't be looking at any of these cuts.
Yeah.
I would ask, first, thank you for coming and saying this. I would love to see a handful of students, whoever you could muster, to come on June 3rd, just to listen. No one has to ask questions or if they don't want to or engage, but just to listen to what we're doing. Because I think, for the most part, we have very, very high hopes that, just based on surveys and based on some of the knowledge that we have of lack of equipment and that some students have, in other words, that they don't have. And I think seeing us and how we operate would be also a good lesson on how government works. You could see that you can come, you can talk to us, you can listen to us, but also you would see what this program is all about firsthand.
Right.
So I would love to see that.
Right. And Scott, I want to make one more suggestion, that it may behoove you and Mike and Jennifer and Christina to get together and talk about meetings that are scheduled for parents and students about one-to-one for the end of this year and maybe towards the end of the summer, and make sure that conversation is rolled into all of the back to school, any of those kinds of things. And it may even behoove us to do something specific just on that for people to be able to address their concerns.
Taking notes.
I forgot who said that. You said you wanted to come in tomorrow to present?
Oh, tomorrow would probably be hard for me too, but maybe whenever you work it out with Dr. Taylor and Mr. Lassiter, I could join in on that one.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was about to say something.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hello, Denise May, Fryer, 314 Wayne Street. First of all, I commend you guys for putting the budget together, because God knows I don't want to do it. But I do have to say, I don't know how sustainable this is when you talk about $150,000 on is the average Highland Park assessment. I live a block away. I live in a house that's not fancy. I live in a house that's assessed well over $300,000 that I paid $15,000, over $15,000 in property taxes on, that I got screwed by President Trump's new tax initiative because I used to be able to deduct a lot more. I can only deduct $10,000. So I lost $5,000 $5,000 my family lost in income or deductions. This is not sustainable. You're cutting everything left, right, and center, and I understand why you do. My taxes are high. The budget is tight, and we're losing stuff, and it's not sustainable.
Agreed.
Thank you. Sorry?
Agreed. I'm trying to
Something-
make the case to our legislators. This is far beyond our pay grade, right? I mean, we don't
get
set
it.
state policy. We sure as heck don't set national policy. And all of those things are trickling down. And that's why if you get a chance to go to the website, look at the presentation I gave last week. This is the disinvestment in public education. It's happening from the state level, it's happening from the national level, and as far as I'm concerned, it's a travesty. And then it does pit neighbor against neighbor for resources. And that's essentially what we're sitting here doing, is we're fighting over resources. We're fighting over very scarce resources. And it's ugly, and it shouldn't happen, yet here it is. Here we are.
I'm sympathetic. I support public schools. I'm a product of a public school, high school anyway. State colleges, I'm a product of all that. I support it. I think it's a travesty, but it's not sustainable. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not.
Thanks, Denise. Okay, if there's no further comment on the budget, we are going to move forward with the resolution to adopt the 2019-2020 budget. Linda, do you want me to read this in? Do you want to read this in? Do we need to read this in?
Read what?
Read in the numbers and all that kind of good stuff? Do we need to do that?
It's on the agenda.
Okay, so we don't need to do
People
that.
have agendas.
Okay.
I don't think you need to read it out. I don't think, you don't need a it's not a statement like you need for recessing or anything like that, resolutions.
All right, perfect. So can I, let me just see, I want to make sure I have the right number here. Yep. Can I get a motion to move item 14B?
I'll move 14B.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? So this is the vote on the budget.
Right, so I have a question. If I still have many questions about the one-to-one, then do I vote no on the budget?
I don't know how to
That's
answer
part
that
of
for you.
this budget.
That is part of this budget, correct?
It is, just so you understand.
Mark is going to try to do the
It's
calculations on
done.
the one.
It's a quarter of 1% of the budget. So if you care that much about a quarter of 1% of the budget, that it's unclear to you that we're saving 13,000, but probably closer to 50,000, and giving every student in 6 through 12 a machine that's leased, then if that's what you feel, you should vote your conscience. I'm not telling you how to vote, but you should take that into account. It's about a quarter. It's less than a quarter of 1%. Excuse me. It's about a fifth of 1% of the budget.
But I mean, yeah, people who have a moral objection
If you
to it
have
or
an
a
objection,
pedagogical
you should
objection.
vote against it.
Probably should vote against. I mean, I'm kind of mixed feelings about it. Not financially. I think financially it makes sense. So, I got to vote for it.
Well, if we took that out and went back to the originally proposed number, the budget would be higher.
Yeah, right.
So,
Well, the budget would...
Actually, then the budget would not be balanced.
It wouldn't be balanced, and we couldn't pass it tonight.
correct.
Then we would not be able to
Wouldn't be
approve the
balanced. We'd
budget
need
because
to
it
cut
wouldn't be
something
balanced.
else.
And I think that many of us have expressed that this is not how we would want the world in general to be moving, but that this is, something that we are managing. It's not.
No,
my
I know. I
dream
just
is not to
wish
have
that
every
I
child.
just wish that maybe
No.
the plan was a little bit clearer to me at this point as to why we didn't just start with the high school and why we didn't phase it in and how much money could we save if we just did the high school, because we're talking about savings of $5,000 here and that is important right now. So I'm just I don't know. I didn't know how this works. I don't remember.
Well, I think something to keep in mind is any portion of that we are not leasing, we would need to be servicing the existing or adding computers for the other grades that we're going to be leasing.
And it would be more expensive.
So what we're doing right now, what we're doing right now, is more expensive than moving this initiative and doing it next year.
Well, we had in the budget before we started seriously discussing the quote one-to-one program, not only cost more, but likely would have cost much more because there'll be additional savings from the one-to-one program that we won't know until some of the curriculum and supply budgets start actually flowing in. And if we had kept those, it would have cost more in this budget, wouldn't have been balanced. First of all, as Rob said, we would have to then do something about 6 through 8 in repair budgets. And thirdly, we can't promise what another board will do in a year. So let's say we do 9 through 12. I believe it likely will be a success. Well, another board a year from now could say, we don't want to do it through 6 through 8. And everyone might clamor for it, and it wouldn't happen. So this is a way to do it and get it done and have it.
And we were trying to address those inequities that we were seeing in middle school through high school in terms of homework.
And
I mean, we were seeing that.
It didn't come out of it did not come out of the Finance Committee.
Right.
This came out of
the
policy Committee.
I remember all of that. I'm just like thinking, you know, if it was scaled down at all, is there a savings there?
Right.
No. Okay, that's the bottom line. That's what I want to hear.
Didn't you present that, the scaled back option, and there was no cost savings?
The scaled back option? No, they presented
Like
what.
Mark looked at, you looked at two different levels.
Right.
Correct? There was one there's the current
I
one.
might have very early on, but what I've looked at more recently and all of the board has seen by now, because I've been asked by everyone, is what was in the budget literally the day before we decided to do this, and what is in the day after we decided to do it, and on those numbers alone, and again, not including other savings we anticipate, we're saving more or less $13,000. And if we would put back, and this is what Rob is saying, although I don't remember putting this in writing, maybe it came up at the table. If we were to only have part of it, the part that we didn't have, we would have to do what we used to do, which is buy more equipment and replace more equipment.
Okay.
And those costs would cost more than the lease because buying would cost 4 times as much as the lease.
Yeah, I
for
didn't
equipment.
actually see that anywhere. I just
No,
came
I
up
didn't
with
write
that
it down,
one.
but we
Yeah, I
talked
just
about
did.
Right, yeah. See, I guess, you know, I missed a lot of February and March.
I can't lie, Ruth.
Please excuse me.
Well, but this is also something that I think has come up in other discussions recently, which is the idea, and maybe this gets confusing sometimes to people watching the board and the board's process. We don't and we can't work as a board as a whole. Right? We can't ever work as a quorum. We work in committees. So we divvy up the work. We can't, because of the Open Public Meetings Act law, we can't all meet as 9 people outside of the public. And bandwidth-wise, we can't. You know, like,
It's too much.
none of us have
Right.
time, energy, or brain capacity to do all of the work that is required, right? We don't get paid. Dr. Kaler gets paid, Linda gets paid, the supervisors get paid. They do the work. We just kind of set the direction, right? Like, we don't do the work. We're not allowed to do the work. Mr. Woodward
don't
could
want
read
to
papers
do
in
the
front of
work.
him that tell us that we
have
don't
enough of my
do that
own
work.
work.
Right. So sometimes there may be stuff that's discussed in curriculum that doesn't make it, you know, is in a report, and if you don't read the curriculum report that month or you're not at that board meeting, you don't hear it reported out. Or it may have been discussed in finance and it was part of how we got to where we are, but the rest of the board may not have heard the nitty-gritty details. But that's how boards work. We work in committees. We're a 9-person board. We can't work as a board as a whole all the time. So no, not everybody gets all of the information in the same depth, and that's how it's meant to work. And I've made sure, as the president of the board, that information doesn't just go to me and then I tell committees what to do. The committee chairs, and I think any of the committee chairs can agree to this, they set their own agendas, they work with their committees. I don't tell them what to do. They run their committees because that's how it's supposed to work. Those committees are supposed to work independently with their administrators who are responsible for those committees, and then recommendations come out of those committees and come out to the full board. It is not the full board working on every initiative all the time because we just simply don't have the time. We are volunteer elected officials.
Right.
So
No, I understand that. And I understand how the budget is immense in its proportions, and that, you know, unless you're going and sitting in on every finance committee meeting.
And there are
you're
many of
not-
them,
right.
as we said,
So
you
the
know.
one-to-one thing kind of you know.
Right, and we all have the frustrations that we've
Right.
talked about not being able to do a lot of things that we would like to be able to do. It's frustrating. It's sad to think that we can't provide every single thing, and there are many things that are not funded.
Right. No, the bottom line for me, I guess, right now at this moment in time is status quo. What we're doing right now is going to be more if we continue doing it than this program.
Yes. Correct.
Okay. That's it. That is my bottom line.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so if there isn't any other discussion, Linda, can we have a roll call?
I was not here for like 3
Yeah.
months. Life happened.
Ms. Byer?
Nothing.
First
Oh,
one.
she closed.
First one.
If they're talking to me, it's their fault.
Yes. Mr. Marusty?
Yes.
Ms. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Gowan? Yes. Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Magaziner?
Yes.
Ms. McFadden Nicola?
Yes.
Mr. Roslevich?
No.
Mr. Marusty, do you want to advise Mr. Woodward?
Yeah, he and I have discussed
You
that
have
he's
discussed
free.
this?
Yeah,
Okay.
he'll.
Mr. Woodward?
Abstain.
Okay.
Excellent. Excellent person.
Smart guy.
Okay, so we're going to move on to our committee reports. Michelle, could you give the curriculum and instruction report, please?
Yes, the committee report that I gave at the last meeting is pretty much unchanged.
Still stands.
I think the HIB incident report for March and for April are both showing up here. Is that right? Does anyone know? I think that's March and April.
I don't think so.
No?
It shouldn't be. It should just be March.
I don't believe so.
I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. So this is just the report for March.
Yep.
Number 4 is an addition, I believe, as well as number 5. So number 4, we are adding a new course.
Well, remember, we're back to our workshop, so this is a brand-new agenda.
Yes, okay.
Yes, I know it's confusing because we just met
We
last
just-
week, but
and
last week was our last April meeting. This is our
Right.
first May meeting because we needed to have the budget hearing
So
by a
we
certain
vote-
date. And then next week will be when we vote on the rest of the items. The only items we're voting on tonight is the appointment of
And the
Mr.
budget.
Woodward and the budget, and
Right.
everything else is just for workshop for discussion.
Okay, okay. So
It's a little confusing because we don't usually split it up this
I
way.
should have gotten the paperwork out, but so we discussed the addition of a new high school course for Mandarin Heritage in the high school. Currently, we only have the language courses, and so we're adding Mandarin Heritage for heritage speakers. And we discussed what would be, what units would appear on that course. So basically, they were just different topics that would be discussed as far as Mandarin culture, Chinese culture specific to Mandarin language. But one thing that we decided that we would like to add would be a little bit more of a history type analysis into that course, so that heritage speakers would not only be learning about current day politics related to that part of the world and people who live there, but the history of that part of the world and different types of people that might have lived there and everything that would entail and show in the language. So as language evolves, people that use it are kind of deciding on what those terms are turning into. So colloquialisms of all kinds, change the structure of languages. So that is what this course would be. That would be the study of Mandarin heritage for native speakers. Number 5 is the resolution to authorize the Affirmative Action Officer team to develop a needs assessment and a comprehensive equity plan for 2019-2021 over a 3-year period to implement the plan and to submit an annual statement of assurance of its implementation and progress. This is going to show up again on Equity and Excellence, I believe, later on, because that was part of your discussion. But the first step in this process is a curriculum resolution to authorize the affirmative action team.
the needs assessment. Is what
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the needs assessment is going to be developed by the team. The team needs to be authorized in curriculum. So it's going to show up in both curriculum and in equity and excellence. I unfortunately couldn't stay for the equity meeting, so maybe Dr. Taylor could fill us in more later, or Monique?
It's in my notes, yeah.
Okay.
And that's not a new thing, right?
It's not a new thing, but I think that the process is different.
Well, right, it always, I think a resolution has to be proposed every time the process comes up.
Comes up,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, and that's it. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Michelle. Does anybody have any questions for Michelle?
Yes, so with number 4, so that course is given in Mandarin, am I correct? It is
for heritage speakers, so that is my assumption, but I do believe that
It's an immersion course, so it's almost entirely in Mandarin, just as we do with our Spanish heritage
So
program.
if you're studying Mandarin, but you're not a Mandarin speaker, that's not a course that you
Correct.
could
That is not for
possibly
you.
take.
Correct.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so how many kids can take that course?
we just have it on the agenda to be written at this point. So we don't have anyone registered, and we haven't gotten an idea of interest, but the community seems to be, you know, rich enough in diversity that many of the students that, like Zayu, for example, you know, he would be a heritage speaker. So there's plenty of students that course in particular would serve, and it would also meet the needs of students that are already fluent in Mandarin, and it wouldn't meet a language requirement for them, but it would enhance their understanding of current day Mandarin speakers around the world, not just here.
And the teacher who's teaching that, is that a
Yes.
teacher who is currently on
Correct.
the staff?
Right.
So there's no additional cost to that?
No additional cost.
And,
It is the current.
and as we've done with our Spanish Heritage program, it'll be integrated into one of our levels, Mandarin levels, so it's not a separate section.
I did want to remind the board that in terms of the number of Mandarin-speaking families in the district, that my first or second board meeting soon after I was appointed, a large number of Chinese American families came to the board. The audience was full, and there were students with their parents asking us for the Chinese New Year to be a holiday.
That's right.
And Michelle, who was our student
Yes,
rep, was
Michelle
one of them.
Wong.
She was the rep the year later. And you could look around the room, and those students were translating for their parents. So their parents were not English speakers for the most part, but the students were. It was very, very interesting to see that. So we certainly have and by our student records on the number of Chinese American students that we have in the district, it's quite large now. So I think we are likely in that class to have it.
In my previous school district where I was superintendent at Kenilworth, we actually offered Italian because we had a number of second-generation Italians who wanted their children to recognize their culture. So you'll find that in communities, they'll oftentimes adapt in some way to the needs of the changing demographics of their community.
And when are we getting the course document?
I have it.
Oh, you have it?
Yeah, you weren't at the last curriculum committee meeting. So we were given this, this is just a preliminary course outline, but these are the 6 units that are proposed. I'll just read them really quickly. Chinese language introduction, Chinese family traditions and education, Chinese communities and activities around the world, Chinese food culture and festivals, Chinese fashions and industries, Chinese technology and travel in China. So these are just ideas that were given for potential units. But like I said, one of the things that we discussed was adding more of the historical bent on that rather than just present-day study, that we also take into account the Chinese heritage as far as heritage, like history.
You also recommended a focus on geopolitics.
Yes, geopolitical issues that may or may not affect that community around the world.
Ms. Fittipaldi was very agreeable to that, so she's going to likely incorporate that into the program.
Great.
Okay. There isn't anything else from Michelle. Can we move on to finance and facilities? Mark?
Yeah, I have a nice brief agenda this week. I guess we met so recently. The committee did not meet other than to have budget discussions twice over the last 10 days, or 3 times over the last 10 days. So there's the bill lists. Number 2, the travel and related expense reimbursement report. Number 3. Number 4 is the resolution for contractors for professional services. Young Audiences for Arts for Learning, which is $9,590, funded by Title I, so it's not out of our operating budget. And then items 5 through 8 are 2 sets of roof repairs. The first is roof repairs at the main office and gymnasium at the middle school. And then 6 is the acceptance of the contract with Northeast Roof Repair of Perth Amboy, New Jersey, for a cost of $4,600 to come out of this year's budget. And then item 7 is roof repairs at the high school, and that is been won by, or will be won once we vote, by Northeast Roof Repair of Perth Amboy again for a cost of $35,800. And that'll be used from the monies that we've allocated for the 2019-2020 fiscal year budgeted funds. So pretty straightforward report. And I say over all the years I've been on boards, I'm always reading roof repairs in. No matter how many times the roofs get replaced, we always need roof repairs. It's horrifying.
Such a great place to spend our money, right?
Yeah.
All right. Any questions on any of those items for Mark? No? Okay. Can we move on to personnel and communications with Ann?
Sure. It was just personnel this week, this month. We met on May 1st. We talked about a number of confidential personnel matters. We discussed the open positions that are available. A number of them, I will admit I don't remember which positions have closed and which are still open, but the currently open positions people can see on the district website there's a link to Apple Track, correct?
Correct. And there'll also be another advertisement in the Star Ledger and to our media outlets this Sunday.
Okay. All right. So folks can look out for that. This is the time of year when we do a lot of advertising. Every meeting we go over our personnel movement, this confidential chart with yellow indicating where people have been transferred, moved, resigned, et cetera, to sort of see if we notice any patterns that could be problematic. People leaving in certain subject matter areas or certain schools. So I'm losing track of which agenda is which. There we go. All right. And then we talked about the agenda. It's mostly pretty self-explanatory as usual, but here is the bad news. Number 2 is a RIF. That is the RIF of one elementary school teacher. That is a position, one position. That is a position at Bartle, correct? And the reason that position was chosen was that I believe our incoming second grade class size is reduced, or is it our incoming, one of our incoming?
Yes, the teacher who is leaving us is a second grade teacher.
Because the incoming second grade class is projected to be smaller than usual. Or is it?
No, because we base our RIF selections on seniority, and that teacher happens to be a second grade teacher.
Oh, I'm sorry. But I mean, the reason we were able to we decided to RIF a position at Bartle is because we have a reduction in class size. So one of the grades will have one fewer section.
Correct.
Right.
We can accommodate 5 sections instead of 6. So all of our grades will now have 5 sections. And again, as I said earlier, we approximate to have 24 students in a class.
Right. Sorry, that's what I was trying to get at. It's to accommodate a reduced or not increased anyway student enrollment at Bartle. All right, and I think that is, as Scott just said, that is resulting in one teacher's leaving us, which we of course regret. Number 3 is another big one. That is the resolution to approve the position of teacher of family consumer science. And I mean, we've talked about this a lot. Nobody's happy about this. We've met over and over again. I know the Finance Committee met, and then every other person on the board had questions about it. I believe it was Ucheche that came and spoke at a board meeting. Yeah, there you are. About the impact that this would have on students, particularly on African American students, as this is one of our few African American teachers. And when that extra $250,000 gap showed up, that was when it became clear to the rest of us that we had no idea how we were gonna save the program and deal with that gap. I think right before that, a bunch of us were like, maybe we can find the extra money, and it just...
Some of us had I had 3 different harebrained schemes. I'm going to call them, that would have saved us. None of them were viable, and then we had the $250,000 gap on top of it, and this is a tragedy.
Yeah, it really is a tragedy, and I don't know. So that's number 3. Many others are self-explanatory. We have some resignations. We have 2 non-renewals of numbered employees. Summer camp director, band director, volunteer team doctor. I'm not going to read through each one of these because I think they're pretty clear, and the agenda is up on the website, presumably. It's supposed to be up on the website. We have some paraprofessional transfers, some other transfers, some transfers of teaching staff. Number 17, there's a deadline, I believe is it May 15th, May 16th, something around there, where we have to announce who is going to be hired.
May 15th.
May 15th, okay. So this is our annual list of people that are being non-tenured professional staff who are being rehired next year.
And I should clarify that May 15th is the deadline by which districts have to reappoint or not staff, but August 15th is the deadline by which staff, leadership must tell staff what their assignments are.
I see. So we're not at that stage yet. We're at the stage of identifying who will be retained or not retained. So number 17 is the non-tenured professional staff. That's in regard to non-tenured personnel. That goes on and on. That's number 19, employment of tenured 12-month office staff. Number 20, employment of non-tenured 12-month office staff. 21, non-tenured 12-month administrators. 22, non-tenured 10-month administrators. 23, employment of tenured 10-month administrators. You get the drift, where I'm going here. There is nothing particularly exciting that I want to remark on in terms of salary increases, salary deviations, salary. It's according to contract and past practice. Let's see. So let's see, we have 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, paraprofessionals, 29, our business administrator, number 30 is a teacher. What is NJSL? Oh, is that the
New Jersey Student Learning
That's
Assessment,
the park, analogous to the park test?
That's where we pretend that it's not park anymore.
The Schmark test? All right, excellent. And that's all I have. And it's, the riffs are not a pretty thing. Thank you.
All right. Anyone have any questions for Anne? No? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to policies and regulations with Mark.
Yes. So we, when we met, we reviewed for the 3rd or 4th or 12th time the late arrival, early dismissal, attendance, and then for only the 2nd or 3rd time this year, but previously probably 10 or 20 times, the use of physical restraint policy. Sorry, Ann. And we are presenting those for first reading. And then for second reading, again, is the organizational chart. A lot of time went into item 2, these policies. These are serious policies. They're in effect in the schools. So we've had a lot of discussion about the lateness, the attendance, and the physical restraint. And I really urge my fellow board members to read those carefully before that meeting. I think and I hope we can answer questions and tell you why we made these decisions we made. But it's very complicated, it's difficult, and we certainly want to give the administration the correct policies to deal with these issues. One further thing, we have a long list for our next meeting. I've forgotten the date. My brain is jumbled now, but it's sometime mid-month. We have a meeting scheduled, maybe it's even next week. And in that meeting, we have a nice list of issues to review. Among them is the current policy on loaning equipment to students and staff, which was pointed out by Rob R. So thank you, and we will review that. So we go into the program, the computer loan program, as I like to call it, with a policy that we believe in.
All right, great, thank you. Anybody have any questions about any of the policies that are on for either first or second reading?
No, just a comment. Scott, is Keith, I remember Keith had asked that we advise him of any policies that are upcoming that are going to affect teaching staff. I know that you've spoken about late arrival and early dismissal and attendance. You've spoken about that with, I think, Ms. O and Mr. Lassiter. Should we set a heads up to Keith?
We actually, these policies were also vetted by the Professional Relations Committee. And that is a group of HPEA leadership and several members of the leadership team.
Perfect.
As well.
Yeah, that's what I remember too.
Thank you.
So my only question is on the first page of the attendance policy, that last paragraph is struck. And it's about the superintendent shall calculate and monitor the average daily attendance rate for the district. Is that no longer a requirement that that's done, or? It says whenever the average daily attendance rate does not meet the New Jersey Department of Education requirements, the superintendent or designee.
I recall this discussion. So it is not a requirement that we needed to codify in a policy, and the reality is I do not monitor the average daily attendance, so I figured it's not worth putting in memorialization, you know what I mean?
Right.
If I'm not going to do it on a regular basis. And I doubt, look, I haven't worked in a district in which I recall a superintendent doing such.
Okay. So it's kind of like an outdated practice is what you're saying?
And it's not something which we're required to put in policy.
Okay. All right. All right. If there's nothing else on policy, we'll move on to excellence, equity and excellence with Monique.
Yes, and we met, let me pull that up. We met on May 1st. And to Michelle's point earlier, our first item on the agenda was the comprehensive equity plan, which is actually a state-regulated 3-year plan that all schools have to develop to address federal mandates around equity in all areas from academics to discipline. We had Jen Knapp, our affirmative action officer team coordinator. Would that be her title? I know she has lots of hats. There are a lot of hats that she wears. So she came in and she presented to us kind of where she is in that process. And she actually gave us a nice overview of the process. Where things stand now is that she has to get a needs assessment done, and that's required for June. We're going to pass that board resolution this evening, and next week. Next week. And she discussed the fact that she attended a technical training just to cover all of the areas of the needs assessment that she needs to identify, and that includes our board policies around equity, our curriculum documents around equity, and anything above and beyond that. For instance, we have the waiver process for AP and honors courses. Whatever evidence that we have in terms of what our district does to address areas of equity, and including that in the equity plan is what Jen said that she's working on at this point. Most of our policies we have confirmed are up to date. We did do a kind of thorough assessment of all the policies last year this time, so we are up to date. We shouldn't have an issue where that's concerned. We did discuss just the issue of compliance and what that means for the comprehensive equity plan. We know that our strategic plan includes a significant emphasis on equity and reducing gaps in discipline and academics, and we actually go above and beyond what's required in this comprehensive equity plan. So we had a discussion about whether we should check off the box that we're compliant, or should we say that we're not quite compliant because our students still have gaps in disparities based on race in the areas of discipline, in the areas of academic achievement, and certainly in terms of our numbers in our honors and AP classes. However, we decided that based on the language in the comprehensive equity plan and the requirements as they indicate, we are required to just, I think the terminology was to ensure that all students have opportunities. ensure that all students have opportunity, equal access to, whether it's the honors or AP, or have, yeah, I think that was the key term, that we ensure that. And so it took a little while, I think, for you guys to convince me that that was okay, and that we would stipulate in that we are still working towards reducing the disparities, although we meet the requirements. So let me just, there's a lot of notes here, and I'm just gonna get through some of them that I've already stated. We also discussed just making, to see how we could sort of align the goals in our strategic plan with the requirements of the comprehensive equity plan without adding another layer of unnecessary work, but it's almost like this sense that we need to make sure these two documents are integrated. So we talked about looking at, I know Scott's going to look into figuring out if that's something we need to seriously consider. I'm going to just skim down here. A very interesting, I guess, insight into the affirmative action team is that they actually do work besides fulfilling the requirements for this comprehensive equity plan, because you hear of affirmative action and you think, well, it's just fulfilling state regulations. But Jen Knapp said that the team actually meets periodically throughout the year, every other month, she said. They review the grievance processes that have occurred, if any. They talk about required PD for staff around equity. They will be starting a new initiative of periodic staff and student surveys around different initiatives we have related to equity. And I think the first one they're starting with is culturally responsive teaching, since that's an initiative that's been ongoing for quite some time now. So they're gathering info, they're going to be gathering info from students, staff, to identify needs in areas of the comprehensive equity plan, starting with, okay, they're going to start with 5th, 8th, and 12th grade, so all the outgoing classes in the different schools. And we asked that, we were actually delighted to hear that this process is happening, and we just asked that they would report back to us periodically on the results of that process. The last item we talked about, well, and just to add to that, that we did acknowledge that parent approval would be obtained administratively before those surveys get sent out. The second item on the agenda was the memorandum of agreement between education and law enforcement officials. We did not get deep into the weeds with this document yet. We did decide that we want to look at creating our own list of addenda items that address the areas of concern that we may have with the MOA, since we do have to adopt it as is, in the sense that we can't make changes to what is included in there. But we do feel like we want to convey, as we sign on to it, concerns that we may have, or what our sort of expectations are around information sharing or reporting, or when do we call the law enforcement, that sort of align to our district goals. So we talked about putting that document together as a committee, and then meeting with, I guess it would likely be Captain Corbello at this point, and possibly the chief, whoever on the law enforcement end would come and talk to us and look at this document, look at our addendum, and kind of go through the areas that may need some more clarification, or that we just want to sort of be on the same page with. But it has to be signed. We have to certainly get that done. And we didn't discuss when the deadline is, Scott, and I think you said there's some flexibility, but we do want to go ahead and get that addendum worked out in June when we meet again. Correct, John? Scott, sorry. Did I catch you off guard? It's June. We're going to go through that, right? Okay, perfect. And I think that's it with the MOA, right? Yeah, I think I covered everything. I'm sorry, I wasn't taking the best notes at this meeting, so I just want to make sure I covered everything that we discussed. Okay.
Yeah, the MOA is like a form agreement between between the school systems around the state and the police, and that's why it itself can't be changed, and that's why we are talking about items that we want to add in an addendum.
Yeah.
Can't be within that.
It would be added.
It's a form agreement. It needs to be added at the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
And we have to finally get it done. We've been talking about this for some time now.
Right. Well, it sounds like, such an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
The document, by the way, is 71 pages.
71 pages.
That does raise a question, Scott, that I don't know if you have the answer to yet, which is, now that Officer Carbello has gone from Officer Carbello to Sergeant Carbello to Captain Carbello, is he still liaisoning with the schools, or do we have a new point of contact?
He's been mum about that, because I think they're still considering how they're going to proceed. So we don't have any new information about that yet.
Okay, so as of right now, if there are issues in any of the schools,
Still,
Captain Carbello is still the contact person,
Captain
but that
Carbello.
may, possibility that may change. Because, I mean, I have to say, since this issue has been circulating around the board for, I feel like, as long as I've been on the board, one of the things that has, I think, mollified some of the concerns that board members have had over the years is it specifically being Officer Carbello and the now Captain Carbello, and the specific training that he has, and his specific demeanor, and his ability to develop relationships with students, and his approach to students. So were that person to change for the district, I think we have to be very upfront about it. We need to get to know that person. We need to, you know, like, that's a big deal.
Good point.
That's a really, 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 really big deal. So I hope that, you know, you and I have not met with Gail and Susie in quite some time. You know, I'd hope that maybe we could jog that process a little bit and have that conversation, because it's something that's kind of been concerning me.
Well, perhaps you and I should see if we could make a meeting with the new chief and Captain Carbello, just to meet and greet, and then we can start fleshing out some of our future ideas. Sound good to you?
Sure.
I'll put something on my to-do list.
Right, it's almost 10. Okay. But yeah, I just want to make sure that that stays on our radar, because that's vitally important.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Any other questions for Monique, comments or anything? Okay. If there's not, then we will move on to our first regular public comment of the evening. So if you would like to make public comment on any other topic, please make your way to the podium now. If you could, please make sure to state your name and address, full name and address for the board secretary, so she can record that, and make sure you also write it down on the piece of paper.
Derek Schilling, 344 Becker Street. First, thanks very much to all the members of the board and to Dr. Taylor for listening to concerns over the past month or so about world language education in the district. I'm a world language educator myself. I addressed you on the 18th of March about French as an African language, and I wanted to return to you to say another few words about curriculum in the district. I actually work in a department where there are 7 languages taught, including Hebrew, Yiddish, German, Portuguese, Italian, French, and Spanish. And as it turns out, many students in the university where I teach begin as first-year college students and manage to major or minor in a language. So it suggests that, as Member Beyer was saying earlier, that it is possible to start late and still reach a very sufficient level of proficiency in a given language. I wanted to thank Chairperson Simrosti for expressing her regret about the way in which the survey was handled when it was distributed to the parents of HPMS students about the discontinuation of French. And were French to be discontinued, what language would you choose? Nothing at the time, as far as I understand, in the language of the survey suggested that bringing a new language online in the event, it would be Mandarin, suggested that bringing a new language online would entail the discontinuation of another language at the high school level. I think here a follow-up question would have been necessary to provide the clarity to families in that situation. And this would also include, I believe, students in the district at the high school level. And another thing that strikes me is that it could have been useful at that time to poll students who had graduated from HPHS and who had taken courses in French all the way through French 4 or AP in the event, and who would have been able to comment about the impacts that had had on their long-term educational achievement. And Dr. Taylor mentioned earlier the fact that it takes time to arrive at a decision, and we had a few exchanges about the possibility of different models that would allow for the continuation of 3 languages within the district. Not only does it take time to come up with such solutions, but it also takes time to build a program. And the French program, I think there's abundant evidence that this is a well-performing program. It's not something that's just meeting expectations or that's falling short of expectations, but rather there are a good number of seniors who are reaching the very highest levels of proficiency in the language, who are taking AP and getting 4s and 5s, who are also able to get marks of distinction in the National French Test, which is one of the benchmarks for world language educators in the language. So obviously, you're very concerned about cost. I understand that in Dr. Taylor's estimation, there may be no cost-neutral solution here. The sixth period has come up on a number of occasions, and the possibility of needing to bring in a second Mandarin teacher to extend beyond middle school into the high school. I would simply submit, why not have a simplified system in which Spanish is the first language, since this is an American language. I think we would all agree that this is nearly equal to English in many geographical contexts. This is an American language. Why not have Spanish from 6 through 12, and then consider having a shorter introduction of other languages, including Mandarin and French, from 9 through 12, or possibly 8 through 12, if it were to become financially viable. I think another thing to consider is best practices in introducing new programs. I don't know if an impact study was done looking at data from commensurate districts around New Jersey, gathering, for example, longitudinal data about how, let's say that cohort of now 50 students of Mandarin, how does this pan out over the next 4 or 5 years? Can you count on having a block, or are you going to have a pyramid where there's only a few students at the very top? So in the absence of data about program introduction in Mandarin, I would really be curious to see what other sorts of research the board has done in that regard. And another thing that I just wanted to mention, Dr. Taylor said that speaking, I believe, of the current French teacher in the high school, that individual is going to move on. Well, on some level, all of us will move on. Some of us will move on with our boots on, and others will have time for retirement. But the important thing right now is we have, I believe, a very high-performing program. And when you have a bird in the hand, why look at the bush? Thank you.
Thank you, Derek.
Hi, I'm Daphne Robinson. I live on North 7th. I was also coming here to talk about the proposed elimination of the French program in high school. I was very surprised 2 years ago when French was abruptly eliminated, particularly given that the communication, I know, Darcy, you thought that it was very clear communication to the public, but the only communication that I saw was that one note for the survey saying, oh, we might have this problem with French. What would be other languages you installed? Something that came in the middle of all the craziness of the summer. Being French myself, knowing a lot of people in the French community here, having talked to a lot of people who are French students, who are French teachers, and as you said, some of them have decided that they don't have jobs, so they're finding new careers. They were looking for jobs as French teachers. There's a huge Lycée Français and an Alliance Française in Princeton. There's a huge community there. There's actually a French consulate there. And never in any of these discussions we have had was there, despite asking several times, you never said that you reached to anybody in the French community, in the Alliance Française, in all the teachers who are around, and that is really a missed opportunity. So I do not at all believe, based on my anecdotal experience of meeting so many people here in Highland Park who happened to be French teachers who were looking for jobs, I don't quite understand how it was so impossible to find a French high school teacher. I was also very surprised today to hear Dr. Taylor say that you had 19 students in 6th grade Chinese, I should look back at my note, and 26 in 6th and 7th grade. I'm a scientist. You don't need to know much to mean that would mean 7 students in 7th grade doing Mandarin. That seems particularly very, very little, especially that the data you had before were that there were 21 last year. So an attrition rate of 66% would be very troubling for the future of the Mandarin program. You know, if you only have 50 students in the whole middle school, and on top of it, you're having that level of attrition from one year to another, that does not sound at all like a sustainable program. Finally, a lot of your criticism of the program of keeping French in high school centered on having it in 8th grade, that is not a requirement, as many people have said, and I think nearly everybody knows. 3 years of French would be sufficient and even less for people to learn French. And I think we have a program that is ongoing. We have students. We have a lot of interest in the community. We used to have about half of the kids who were taking French. Now we have all of 50 students who are taking Mandarin, and that is a tremendous loss of opportunity for the kids. Keeping French just at the level of the high school with a teacher we already have and a program we already have established would only benefit the community rather than having lesson pushing all of these students into Spanish.
Thank you, Daphne.
Good tag team here. So I don't really have a problem with the Mandarin classes or the Spanish classes. Actually, my sister's in one of the Mandarin classes at the moment. What my problem is that there's currently high school students who are taking French, who are juniors, sophomores, even freshmen. I'm excluding the seniors because they're graduating. We don't care about them at this moment. But mainly I'm more focused on the underclassmen who are taking French. And now that French is going to be considered cut out of the high school?
No. So the students who are currently taking it will be able to take it throughout the rest of their high school career. It's just not going to be for the current 8th graders, won't be able to take it in 9th graders is the plan.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Thanks, Yuchachi. You're the best.
So cute.
Anna Frey, I live at 344 Becker Street. It's late. I'm not going to annoy you by repeating things that I've said over and over. I just want to echo the many important things that people who spoke have said today and the other days. I think this is, I regret we came to that conversation so late and in such dramatic terms. This is a conversation we should have had 2 years ago if it was indeed planned that high school French would be phased out, on which I have some doubts. I went back, looked at the communication, August 21st, 2017, the day French died in our district. Frankly, from the report of the one-person curriculum committee meeting, it was not clear, I believe, to the curriculum committee that their decision would have such an impact, because the impact is profound. I speak to you as a French teacher, and I just see the vast arrays of opportunities that you are closing for our students. It's a tremendously important decision you're taking. I'm not sure you've ever taken such an important decision to cut French in the district.
Wow.
At the curriculum level. I'm talking curriculum, okay? So from the curriculum perspective, this is one of the most important decisions you've taken. And this decision was on, I entirely understand the circumstances, the difficulty, the brusque departure of a teacher is one of the worst things that, that can happen to, a course. And I understand you conducted a very thorough search, that you spent significant money, significant resources in trying to staff that position in middle school position, right? I wouldn't say it was an exhaustive, I think it's been, I'm sure it was a very tiring, exhausting, but it wasn't exhaustive because, we're told that people who have connections in French-speaking communities were not approached. I work at the French department at Rutgers. I said that last time. I'm sorry I have to repeat it, but just for the public, we were not approached. Mary Curran, who was approached, is in the Graduate School of Education, which Dr. Taylor said at that August 2017 meeting, but correcting the impression of the person reporting was under the impression that Mary Curran was in the Chinese language program. So, when your decision is based on expertise that maybe you haven't had the time to fully review because of the circumstances, it cannot be the foundation of such an important decision. We have an array of students who went to do great things with the French. They learned here, for which doing AP French and moving on, doing political science, international relations, has life-changing consequences. So just closing the door on these possibilities on behalf of something that we have no idea what it's going to be. We don't know. The numbers are not good. The numbers suggest an attrition rate very high. So second thing I want to say, so I was shocked about the way in this decision came to have such a profound impact, because the fact is, the president said that you discussed it, but it wasn't communicated effectively. I sincerely doubt this is the case. I don't think there was, I think there was, the understanding came to be that this had been discussed, but this has, the high school, terminating the French program in high school, I don't think has been fully discussed.
I can send you the video and show you exactly where it was discussed. And
in June?
Yes, I mean, you've mentioned a few times this idea of the 21st is the day that French died.
No.
I want to just clarify that the reason the board has the setup that we have, where we have a meeting like this, where it's the workshop, and then we have a voting session, is because we discuss things at the workshop and then we vote on them at the voting session. So what you're referring to is that 21st agenda that you've, or minutes that you've read, was a curriculum committee meeting that happened, Michelle reporting out what the curriculum committee, what happened in the curriculum committee on the 21st, which was a workshop. So nothing happened that day. It was just a decision or a discussion. It was discussed in curriculum, then it's discussed with the full board. So now all the board members have that information about what was discussed in curriculum. Now the full board can discuss it in public in front of whoever comes on camera. And then on the 28th, that's voted on. It was on that 28th that it was fully discussed, actually with Daphne's husband. We had an almost hour-long back and forth conversation with him about the vote that was about to be taken. In that very specific conversation, Anne was actually the one who asked the question, because as this is all going on, I've gone back and I've read all the minutes too, I've watched all the videos. Anne specifically clarified at that meeting, before the vote was taken to hire the Mandarin teacher, which was what was going to set this in process, if this was going to roll up to the high school. And the answer was yes, this is going to roll up to the high school. So again, it was discussed at the board table. It was discussed multiple times at the board table. The fault in communication that I'm identifying is then a letter did not then go out to clarify to that cohort of 8th graders moving up to 9th graders that was going to be what happened. And I very much do regret that. And I wish we had had the foresight to do that. And then also, like I said, set that reminder to do that, earlier than everyone feeling like they found out of nowhere at the 9th grade orientation with Mr. Lassiter. So then that created its own set of problems, because then that kind of was all at the same budget time. So then it seemed like this was a budget decision, which it wasn't. And, it just kind of snowballed from there. But it's not just, it didn't happen on a day. And I think that's an unfair characterization, because the board is specifically set up. This is not how board agendas used to look. Board agendas used to be, it just showed up on the agenda, we voted in, or the board voted, not we. Ever since I took over as president, I made sure that there was we have committee meetings where things are discussed, it's then discussed in a workshop meeting, and then it's voted on the following week. So nothing happens in a day.
Before it comes back, that was in August. So the August 21st meeting was a working session and voting session. The August 28th meeting was a special meeting that you convened just to speak about French, if I remember correctly.
No, it wasn't just to speak about French. It was about a personnel matter.
I think we had one other thing that needed to happen there, like a salary increment or something else, but it wasn't like the typical
voting session, right, because it was a summer
working
meeting.
session, voting session. So most of what was discussed about French happened in the August 21st meeting. Because I know, I went back to watch those, and I was like, I wasn't there for the August 28th meeting because I was away on vacation or something else. The August 21st meeting, I watched and saw a distinct difference between the two, and I was like, my God, personally, I felt like I made a huge mistake because I didn't really understand the implications of what I had voted on August 21st until I listened to the August 28th meeting.
Gotcha.
And I blame it on myself for not getting it at the time. But there was a difference, I think, subtle, but between the August 21st and August 28th. The August 28th meeting, when you listen to that meeting, it's very clear what was going to happen to the French program moving forward. And my biggest problem right now is it's like, I don't want it to be next year. I still want it to be down the road.
I hear you.
Okay, so I withdraw
I'd
my...
like it to not happen at all. I mean, I'd like us not to have lost a middle school French teacher. I'd like none of this to have happened, but the district was presented with a set of circumstances. The board was presented with a similar set of circumstances, and...
Well, it doesn't have to be that way. The board can revise a decision, especially if the decision is a bad decision. I claim this is a bad decision. I withdraw my comment about the discussion. I tried to find the video of the April 28th, oh, sorry, that's my birthday. August 28th, just happened. August 28th, I couldn't find the video, so I apologize for that.
It's right there. It's all on our district YouTube channel.
I'll go back. It's not, I don't want to litigate over what happened or what didn't happen. I was hurt by the August 21st because it seemed like, oh, should we have Chinese or should we have ASL? And it didn't seem like everybody was fully aware of what that means for our students, is of the students' needs that I'm concerned. I know it's late. I know I've spoken many times, and I will respect your time. And I do want to thank you for your service. It's amazing work you do. Your volunteers. I know that you're not looking forward to this type of adversarial, comments and interventions, but it shows that shared governance exists, because in this case, there were a number of mistakes that were made. There were a number of half-truths that were made. This discussion happens now because we're moving we're moving into the phasing out moment, and people understand what's happening. I want to say one thing, that our proposal, this is not the time. Our proposal was just kind of, nobody tasked us with a proposal. It was pushback. We were trying to come up with ways to avoid this situation in which we wanted to maintain the status quo. Like for 2 years now, for this year and next year, we'll be teaching 3 languages in high school through something that is called bridge instruction, so in which we share the middle school and the high school. So the person teaching Mandarin in middle school is also the person teaching 9th grade and maybe possibly 10th grade in middle school. There will be a moment in which this doesn't work anymore, right? And then you have to consider possibly hiring a partial-time instructor for Mandarin. Anyway, in the proposal, we try to work with this idea. We try to work with what you have right now, which is actually a very interesting creation. You've created without even, without almost, almost organically, you've created a model for bridge instructions that allow sharing resources between the middle school and the high school. Agreed, it's complicated. It's going to be scheduling. So we were proposing to extend that model to French. I have come,
So Anna, it is getting late, and I know, I've sent an email to all of you guys saying, let's meet over the summer, let's talk about it. I would like to.
I want to say something. So before we close, I appreciate this offer. I take the offer. I'll be happy to talk to you. I would like this discussion to be as public as possible. So there's possibilities for input more, because I don't think you ever have enough input from the public. In a constructive spirit, what you described, Dr. Taylor, was one of the options. The proposal was very open-ended. It wasn't a proposal at all. It was ways to try to see how this sharing of resources could happen. You identify one of the flaws in the proposal. I wasn't happy with it, the idea that we would teach 2 years of Mandarin in middle school. I never liked that piece. I have come to think of a better model that would be what Mrs. Bayer was presenting, in which we would teach 4 years of Mandarin plus 1 year in high school, maybe another year if the program is incredibly successful. I won't be going on, but it's what we have. So all I'm saying, I'm not even saying, I understand we've lost the battle. There's not going to be any French in 9th grade next year. It's not the end of the world. It's fine. We can live with that. What I don't want, I don't want you to kill French, period, without assessment of what we have, of enrollment trends, of the needs of the students. Without this survey never went to high school. Okay? The survey that was done that decided ultimately on the fate of the French program, it never went to high. If we did the survey for middle school, why don't we do a survey for high school when we do the same thing in high school? So I don't understand the process that is happening, and I think we can do a better process. I would like a task force or a committee that is created and that operates in the fall, that examines these things, volunteer. The same that we did under the Soto administration of all things, right? So before Dr. Taylor's time, we had a very productive committee on ESL that actually contributed to improving the ESL committee. We can do similar things if you let us. You don't have to accept any of it. It's your prerogative not to support a proposal, a report, but let's talk. That's all I'm saying. And I'll leave you at that. And I do thank you for your patience. I realize this is excruciating. I don't really want to do this, but I feel I have to.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Anna.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Denise May Fryer. Je suis un produit de les aides américaines publiques. Okay? I learned everything I learned about French in high school. I had fancy French in college, where I got to read all kinds of literature and shit like that.
Denise,
I'm sorry.
Come on, dude.
I apologize for that. That came out without me thinking.
I learned German and I used it in Germany. I mean, come on.
I apologize. I apologize sincerely for the S word. I do not apologize for the fact that I can speak French reasonably well, enough to travel the world, enough to have used it on the job, and to have been exposed to so many people who speak French. My first exposure to African cultures was in French. My first day of French class, where I learned about Le Côte d'Ivoire, where it was some silly conversation about meeting these people to have lunch in the Côte d'Ivoire, in Abidjan. You know, I didn't get that in any other classes. So I would really, really like you to think about French just for high school, as Miss Bayer said. I did not learn anything in grammar school regarding languages, okay? I learned it in high school. There's no reason to think that a kid can't pick up French and be able to have it with them for the rest of their lives. And again, I apologize for swearing, but I've had French in my life since I was 14 years old. I am now 57 to be years old. That's a long time. I was in France last summer with my kid, and she was nervous, so I spoke French. And my kid is in the AP French class here, and that's nothing to do with Miss Havis, who is doing a fine job with the kids. No, she's not in the AP class. She's in a French class. That's something to do with Miss Havis. My kid's nervous, but it just blows my mind that I didn't know about this. I found out about this in a conversation, a casual sort of conversation with Miss Havis, that it was getting removed from the high school. I don't get it. I just don't get it. You want to make people world citizens, global citizens, whatever the hell you want to call it. Heck you want to call it. I am a global citizen because of this silly thing I took on a whim in high school, which was French. That's why I'm a global citizen, long before that phrase existed. I used French my entire life. I used it in my career. I used it to speak with people in the criminal justice system. I supervised people from Africa, from Haiti, from Canada, from multitude of places where I had to use French. Granted, a lot of it devolved into Franglais for a while, but I used French. I used French for my entire career. And I learned that at a working class public high school, and I know it's late, but too bad. It's a public comment, and I'm commenting.
Denise, I didn't say anything.
No, I just saw a bunch of eyeballs look at the clock, which is why I said that. So I'm sorry that, I'm pissed off about it. And I'm pissed off about the fact that I didn't know anything about it, and maybe I should have known about it. I own that. But you know what? It should have been more public. I acknowledge that you guys apologize, and I'm not trying to piss people off. I'm just really upset about this, and I think you're cutting off kids from an opportunity that they can walk away from. That, 40, 50 years later that I'm out of high school, the one thing that was really, really useful was French for me, and I really would hate to see you cut that off from other people. And, great if you have Mandarin, but you know what? The kid who was sitting here before, Zayu, last time I was here, said, put the French in. Which is why I have, conspiracy theory mania about this whole Mandarin thing. I'm in favor of people learning Mandarin. Mazel tov, great, learn it, but not at the expense of French. Not at the expense, you guys have explained it, I get it, but you know what? The community really, I don't think, had enough input into this, and I really think that cutting off this program at the knees, or cutting it off with Ms. Havis, you're going to throw into ELL, whatever you're going to do with her. She says she's going to be here. You can hire a French high school teacher. You don't have to put it into middle school.
Thank you, Denise.
Okay, no, I have one more comment that doesn't relate to French, which is what's going on with the special education. Why is Miss Miller going from the high school to the middle school?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
Why is Miss June Miller going from the high school special education to the middle school? What's up with that?
The GLOW program has been on staff since Ms. Klauslau moved to Irving.
Right.
So rather than hire somebody from outside, we want to hire a proven expert who started our high school program, which was Ms. Miller, down to the middle school. And she and I have been having discussions about the matter, and she's excited about it.
And so what's going to happen with high school GLOW?
We have another teacher whose name I'm not prepared to announce in public, who's in our high school, who co-teaches with Ms. Miller, who will take over the high school GLOW program.
And nothing will change from the GLOW program in the high school, I presume?
Nothing was taken?
Nothing will change.
Nothing will deteriorate. We're deteriorating.
No, absolutely.
It's one of our most successful
We're 100% confident that we're going to maintain.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm worried.
Actually, we're going to get a twofer out of this. We've been in effect mentoring and training another high school teacher who's been working with Miss Miller to take over that program, while Miss Miller now moves on to the middle school to take over the GLOW program there.
Okay, I was just very disconcerting given how much stuff we're cutting these days. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Come on, you Chechi, it's all you. You don't have to tiptoe. Walk up there.
I'm sorry. I don't know. Everyone's tired, but hey. So
we're really glad that you're here and you speak on behalf of your classmates. So don't tiptoe and don't apologize.
I'm a little delirious because I'm sleep deprived, but we're trying. But I really want to stress what the previous speaker has said, is that language is such a big thing in our school. Especially French, Spanish, any type of language that's happening in our school. But the fact that French is being cut out after like 4 years, I think you said earlier, after 4 years that's happening in our high school and then it's just completely gone, I would have to disagree with that. Because currently, even in middle school, there are students who do speak French or need to know how to speak French in order to like communicate with families or just to know the history of French and like the history that's happening like around just centering French. And the fact that this is being taken out and students don't even have the opportunity to even pick that, I would have to disagree 100% with it. And I just wanted to see if do you have any other solutions that can keep French in our school, or is that just 100% out? Is that
Currently, right now, we don't. Currently, right now, the plan is that for the rising ninth graders, Mandarin will start to be offered to those students. So those students will have the option, grades 6 through 12, of Mandarin and Spanish. So as the French phases out, the Mandarin will phase in, is the plan. So the plan is to always maintain 2 languages, because we agree that languages are very important. And again, I can't say this enough, no one looked to get rid of French. We lost a middle school French teacher. I know there's been public comment about there being French teachers that were available, but Dr. Taylor has provided multiple times the number of steps that he went through. The personnel committee, I know at the time, was chaired by Judy Pietrobono. She was very dogmatic about the search both for the French teacher and for the lower grade librarians, which was similarly hard to find. They seem to be 2 positions that are next to impossible to fill anymore. And I respect all the public comment that was given, but it's hard to imagine that there were this wealth of French teachers out there when we advertised in every newspaper available. We went to. It's hard to imagine if people were looking for jobs that they wouldn't have found all of the job postings that we were putting out there. We put out $7,000 worth of job postings. So if you're actively looking in central New Jersey for a French position, how'd you not see $7,000 worth of ads? So it was no one's intent to cut the French program at all. It was a lack of being able to find a teacher. So that's why the survey only went out to middle school. That's why we didn't ask if students wanted to take French, because we couldn't find someone to teach it. And we'd run a mediocre program for, I think, 2 years at that point, by the time we got to the point where we couldn't find a teacher. So we thought a strong Mandarin program was preferable to a weak French program. And yes, we have a very strong teacher in the high school. Absolutely, no one is questioning that at all. But we couldn't find someone in the middle school. And at the time, we felt strongly about maintaining 2 languages and having them be grades 6 through 12.
Okay.
I'm so glad you're here. You're awesome.
Yeah.
Don't ever tiptoe up to that podium, ever again. No matter what time it is or how many times you've been up there. That's why it's there.
And now it's time for me to go home because I need to sleep.
Yes.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Chechi. Okay, if there isn't any other public comment, I'm going to move on to my president's report. Thank you all for coming out. Please, we don't see this as adversarial. We really don't. That's why we're here. It helps to have public input. So thank you. Have a good night. Okay, so my president's report. Here we are right back at funding, because I did finally get the New Jersey School Boards Association resolution, and what it's about? School funding, because everybody in the state's angry about school funding, and guess what? Guess who's really angry about it? Those districts that I've been talking about, those S2 districts. So this is one of those S2 districts that lost, I don't even know how much money. They'd be happy if all they were cutting were 2 programs. Like, districts are losing, as Dr. Taylor mentioned earlier, as I mentioned the other week, if not, 50, 60, 70, 80 teachers in, when you get up to a district the size of Camden, it's 270 teachers and 2 buildings. So this is hard, this is difficult. We're having to make horrible decisions. Other districts are having to make way more horrible decisions. And these folks, I don't remember off the top of my head what district this is, but if you go into the board drive under the president's report, and Chris, you will get access to this as of tomorrow. So we have everything, just so you know, we have everything on a Google Drive, and our agendas are there, and all of the supporting documents are there. So under the supporting documents for my president's report, there's the resolution that's going to be considered at the New Jersey School Boards Association Delegate Assembly on the 18th. So if everybody look at that before the next meeting, we can discuss that a little bit more in depth then. But again, it is about one of these S2 districts saying it is really not fair for you guys to come in and take so much money away from us. Please don't take it away from other districts, but don't take it away from us either. So, I mean, that's really what happened is the state went and said, well, we've decided that you guys over there have been overfunded for all this time, so we're going to take a chunk of money away from you, and we're going to give it to some of these districts that we've decided are underfunded. So it just kind of, it was bad enough under Christie when we're losing funding like ours, so we're underfunded from where we were 10 years ago, but now some districts just lost massive chunks out of their budget in 1 year, and the proposal is that they're going to lose those massive chunks for the next 5 years. So we're supposedly going to gradually go up over the next 5 years, but some of these districts are going to gradually go down. So it's a hot mess. There's no other way to phrase it.
Weymouth.
Weymouth, yes.
Weymouth in Atlantic County.
Yep. And I believe there was another similar resolution.
Middle Township.
Yeah, I believe there was another similar resolution from another, the NJSBA received an identical resolution from the Middle Township Board of Education in Cape May County. So then what School Boards Association tends to do when they get multiple resolutions on the same topic, they merge them together. So take a look at that when you get a chance, and we can discuss that a little bit more in depth next week when we go through our liaison reports. And then speaking of things, I will read into the record a statement from our attorneys about item B on my president's report, which is the charter school litigation update. Similarly, as we had this is now our second appeal of a Hatikva expansion. Our first court system, unfortunately, it did not go in our favor. Our second one has now made its way through the court, and it's going to be heard sometime later this month. May 30th. And our attorney, the attorney who's representing us for this, David Rubin, is also representing other districts on similar appeals. So they've merged all three of those together, which is A, helpful because A, strength in numbers, B, less cost to us, although, the cost at this point is minimal because he's already done all the research, he's already done all the work. All he has to do is go and litigate it. So there's not that's probably not the right word. Sorry, I'm not a lawyer. Yeah, he has to go appear at the hearing. So you guys have a better sense because I'm not very good at interpreting what lawyers say, so it's better if I just read it. It says the Appellate Division of Superior Court has scheduled a combined oral argument for these three cases on May at 9:30 a.m. hearing room on the 8th floor of the Hughes Justice Center in Trenton. Typically, a 9 a.m. start time means a case is among the first on the calendar for that morning and that the court considers it more complex and potentially precedent-setting than the run-of-the-mill appeal. It also usually means we will be heard by a 3-judge rather than the 2-judge panel assigned to dispose of more mundane cases. We will not know the particular judges on our panel until sometime in May, but they will be drawn from the 4 judges comprised of Part A of the Appellate Division. The presiding judge of that part is Judge Jack Sabatino, one of the most highly respected and independent thinking members of the court, and I am hopeful he'll be sitting that day. As we're aware, each of these are held independently, but all present the same question. Did the legislature intend to require New Jersey school districts to fund students' attendance at far-off charter schools having no relationship with the funding district and the community? Or, as we have argued, were charter schools envisioned as educational alternatives a demonstrated need in their home community? The Department of Education's position is that a district in Sussex County is obligated to underwrite a student's attendance Cape May County, and there is no requirement that the funding district be included in the charter school's department-approved district or region of residence. We disagree for reasons we have argued in our brief submitted to the court. By simultaneously raising this issue in as many cases as possible, our hope was that if it would impress on the courts the statewide importance of the question and maximize our chances that the New Jersey court would accept these cases for review if the legislature does not come up with a fix in the meanwhile, which they're not going to. appellate division has scheduled these 3 cases for argument together suggests that, win or lose, they recognize the importance of the matter at hand. As a practical matter, our biggest obstacle to overcome will be a different appellate panel's ruling against us in the earlier Highland Park appeal addressing the same issue. While we disagree with that panel's binding on any other panel of the court, the members of the court do tend to give deference to their colleagues unless there's good reason to disagree. Nevertheless, our hope is that we persuade them we're right. If not, that the Supreme Court will recognize that this issue isn't going away and agree to accept these cases for further review. So that's where we are. May 30th, if you don't have anything to do, come with me and we'll go sit. I went to the last one. It's fascinating. It's utterly fascinating to sit there
It's
and
on my calendar.
yeah, it's really a process. I sat there last time with Jonathan and Doug and listened to David arguments and listened to the judges ask their questions, and it was just utterly fascinating. And if we're successful here, that throws $450,000 back in our budget, and none of us are having this conversation. We are trying, wherever we can, we're trying to scrape those monies, those, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars that are being siphoned off here and everywhere. Anybody have any questions on that?
I'm sorry, it's so late. What's the projection of how long this process is going to take?
Well, this year, I mean, this has been going on for years.
Right.
We're at the tail. So last time, I feel like within almost like a month or two, at least, after we had the hearing, we got the response back from the court. So we're at the tail end of this. We should know we also have the opportunity, now that these 3 cases are kind of joined, I think, David, even if we're not successful here, we take these 3 districts and we go back to the Supreme Court in New Jersey. So, and again, then we have 3 districts who are in this with us. It minimizes the cost to the district and it increases our potential impact across the state. So here we go. Okay. Any other questions for that? I also wanted to address with you guys Dr. Taylor's evaluation, that time of year again. So now that budget is officially here and Scott has so much free time on his hands, I'm going to delve into this on his end. The hope would be we have this to us like mid-May. Could we do that?
That's next week. I'll start working on it.
Okay. Because we had the board time to do our end, then it needs to go from us and be put together, and then we all need to meet together as a board and go over everybody's feedback, come up with consensus as a full board. And last year we kind of got a little too squished and it got a little messy. So I wanted to bring this up a little earlier. Well, that was odd.
They're going to attach and send you.
Like some water in there. That was like, yeah, that was a weird noise.
Oh, it's the bleachers.
And there you go.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Michelle. You're welcome. For getting a mental layout of the building and understanding what was going on, because I was picturing like a giant rat in there or something.
Oh, God.
Us, like, you know, at least a week to get it and be able to respond, and then have a board meeting where we can meet in executive session and pull over all of our thoughts together, and then give us time to come up with that that final evaluation. So be on the lookout for that week or 2. Okay. All right. Great. That's it for me. We'll move on to Scott had something that he wanted to give us a little bit of information about.
Back up.
Sources of strength at the middle school.
Is it listed?
Yes, Scott, sources of strength at the middle school.
So we discussed the possibility of bringing the high school program. Ms. Holman, who's been working with Ms. Krieger on this program, would like to start piloting the remainder of this year and into next year classes that they've been offering at the high school down at the middle school before they actually try to generate an organization down. I feel like they haven't start this for 2019-2020. So we are going to take it slow with the implementing it fully 2020-2021. But starting by piloting the classes and some of the work that the kids have been doing at the high school. I think part of the problem, though, is the lack of time and personnel. We only have 2 people now who are already teachers and counselors. Ms. Holman's a therapist at the teen center. Who are putting a lot of time into this, all on their own. So I think they also feel like they need to consider who they would add to the to the group, recruit to help lead it. I might be disappointed. I'd love to have this here, but wins the race, and I do respect what I think Ms. Holman and Ms. Krieger are telling me without telling me directly. Okay.
And have we reached out to Amy to get her input
About the middle school?
Resources there.
There are.
You know,
Once I seriously to Ms.
Yeah.
Holman and Ms. Krieger, we'll reach out.
Yeah.
I mean, Amy's been leading the high school program
Yeah.
every step of the way.
Yeah, and
She's
she's
definitely
very invested in it. If she were to get behind, you know, a move to the middle school, do whatever possible, make that the least burdensome as possible. It's getting later and later by the minute, isn't it? Anyone have anything for new business?
Yes, I just wanted to remind everybody, HPF fundraiser, the gala is this Saturday night. I did send a reminder note to my colleagues here along the board. For those who need to see me, you may see me later.
Aha. Aha.
I saw you.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, any other?
Teacher Appreciation Week. I just want I wish I would have said we had two teachers in the audience, but
Teacher, Bruce the teacher.
And I have a happy note that emailed me to say how happy they were that they made the honor roll. Like, and it was just a sweet.
yeah,
Those little things.
yeah. I encouraged my kids to actually and gather up some of their friends and classmates to say. So, I just wanted to say that, make sure that everyone knew this is Appreciation Week.
Michelle. Any more public comment? Denise? Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.